Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pylon Show. We're on episode number 63 right now. That is a lot of episodes. Before we really get into it, I do want to say happy birthday to my fallen friend, Jeff. Without him, the show wouldn't exist. So much love to his family, friends, and fans and all that. So this show today, we have a very exciting show actually laid out. I'm quite thrilled with the guests that we have for this as well, because we have some great topics, which I will roadmap in a moment. First, let me talk about the sponsors that we have. AFKT.com has been supporting us for a long time. They are down right now, but still shipping out their orders, so best to them. We also have our Matcherino.com/The Pylon Show, which I believe is Matcherino is somewhat down right now. I can't seem to get the code to work, so that's fine. If you're watching the VOD or something, you can try. The code is love this week. Check it out. Of course, we have the best way to support the Pylon Show, which is through our Patreon, patreon.com/The Pylon Show. Without you guys, the show absolutely would not exist. So thank you very, very much for that. And of course, thepylonshow.com, our website. This is where you drop your Q&A questions if you are a Patreon guy or you want to see when the next show is, or where you can watch any of the VODs, download any of the podcasts, check out the show notes. It's got absolutely everything for your Pylon Show needs. So definitely check that out. All right, so on to our guests here. First off, returning for his umpteenth time, Nero. How are you doing, my friend?
Fantastic. Being here is always a treat. Good to have some rich conversation with some excellent people. Looking forward to it. Hello, Twitch chat.
Hello, indeed. Then we have TLO, fresh off of WCS Montreal. How are you doing?
Good. Just recovering still. Dreamhacks can always be a little bit draining, you know, the darkness and the loud lights, but doing well. Happy I saw my friends, you know. That's
yeah.
I feel like that's the core of StarCraft. Friendship is magic, and looking forward to spend some more time with some more of my friends.
Yeah. Fellow MLP fan over here. Had some lively Twitter discussions about what is canonical and not. Anyway, also joining us here today, Vibe. Vibe, have you been on the Pylon Show before? I feel like you have, like, one time maybe.
Yeah, I was on one before. You sadly were not there though, but I was on one, like, I think about like 2 months ago. So it's been a little bit, but it was good. It was good. I'm glad to be back, and I'm just struggling to get back to a normal schedule because I'm fresh off of a World of Warcraft bender, just like Neuro.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that all day.
That's what just about every human on Twitter has been talking about. So
yeah.
Well, welcome back to the world of StarCraft. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So the first thing we are going to do today is jump into This Week in StarCraft, of course. Run through that real quick, and then we have our discussion topics. We're going to start off with a topic about streaming a game that's not StarCraft for a StarCraft streamer, which I think that at least a couple of you have some experience with, so that'll be kind of interesting to hear. And then we'll be jumping into WCS Fall, talking about that, the BlizzCon WCS circuit spots, the current balance of the game, including the race that you three play, Zerg, and then wrapping up with some GSL Code S talk, as well as the Patreon questions. All right, so without further ado, let's get into This Week in StarCraft. All right, of course, don't forget This Week in StarCraft. I'm not really doing justice to anything in here. If you want to learn more, if you want to play in the tournaments, watch the VODs, whatever, just check out our show notes that are absolutely everywhere. We have a wonderful calendar in there and just about everything going on in the community. So let's do it. Sentimiento Latino. Number 68 was won by Ryu over Sinner. This is an OSC esports tournament for Latin American residents only. And of course, if you've made it really far in the WCS, you are not allowed to play. So encouraging that younger scene. Check it out. The Alpha X Pro Series, the one by Enki and Romsley. This one is for the Latin scene as well. And it looks like Paco Mike took down the Zerg Lord this week. You can check that out over on africatv.com/AlphaX ESP. All right, WESG continues forward. It looks like Ranger from Malaysia has won his spot. In Myanmar, we had Pegasus defeat M-Thit in the finals, so we'll be going as well. And it looks like the spot for Thailand is going to be decided relatively soon here on September 14th, with Strike versus Muyong in the finals. All right, the Chinese Team League Championships for 2019 is occurring right now. They're still in the group stage. This tournament has just so many top-end players from China, Korea, and a lot of the non-Koreans as well. You can check out the stream over on Wardy's Twitch channel. Olima League number 166 concluded last night with Solar, or 2 nights ago rather, with Solar taking down Gumiho 3-1. He continues his online reign of terror. Of course, you can check that over on Maynard's channel. The Corporate Esports Association Season 2 continues forward. The preseason is going on right now. You can find out more about this if you work for a company and want to participate at cea.gg. All right, the OSC Melee number 79. Looks like Cyan defeated QZDBD. That is a great ID right there. In the finals, 3-1. All right, congrats on that. The Cranky Ducklings tournament. We had Dom defeat Golo 3-1 in the Master Swan Open number 26, and Esther Reaver, as we mentioned last week, beat Potato Pleb 3-1 in number 68 of the Sea Duckling Open. Of course, these are alternating tournaments. Yeah, Potato Pleb is a great ID, no doubt. Alternating tournaments for players that are in Masters and then also below Masters. So you can check that out on the Cranky_Ducklings Twitch channel. The Proxy Tempest Plat and Diamond Open. Ooh, Potato Pleb is back. Look at that. He took down Kyoji 2-0. You know, it's interesting when I see these players that do really well in the lower level leagues a couple weeks in a row. You got to wonder, I'm like, aren't you about to hit Masters now? Don't you have to stop playing in this? I think that's going to be the case for Mr. Potato Pleb.
Uh-oh.
Says, I picked my name because I like potato, and pleb was a catchphrase in our school. Wow. That's a great origin story name for Potato Pleb. Congratulations, Potato Pleb, on your victory after that narrow defeat in the Sea Duckling Open. All right. StarCraft 2's Platinum Heroes continues forward. This is something put together by Creighton, the many times caster of online things. And you can check that out over on, well, various channels. They have a Discord as well. So check it out in the show notes. All right, the Alibaba Invitational. Well, that's kind of exciting. It plays September 7th through 13th. It looks like they've already done the round of 8 with a lot of Terrans advancing. It looks like it is on the South Korean server with a $1,000 prize pool. You can check it out on Laughing Games stream over on Twitch. The Orbital Colossus War number 1. Denver defeated Firefox 4-1 in the finals. And this is a French community tournament. Yeah, I guess you check that out if you're French. The Bonjour Fight Night Club 2. Showtime defeated Nurchio 4-2 in the first night. It looks like this is probably a long-running tournament. You can check it out over on twitch.tv/Bonjour. That's a lot of players in it. TLO, have you played your matches yet for that?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so looks like it'll probably be going on for quite some time. But yeah, check that out. It's actually quite a nice prize pool, over 3K. All right, the NorCal StarCraft Open. Silky ended up winning over his Tespa teammate. Silky continues to make waves in that NA scene. And this was a Nerd Street Gamers Land. So congratulations to him. You can check out the VODs over on twitch.tv/Tiki. The Starline League Season 7. It's a Russian solo league that's organized by Izzard. It's continuing forward. Looks like 5 of their 6 groups have completed. And I don't think that it is cast in English, so you're going to have to go and listen to some wonderful Russian commentary if you want to check that out. All right, the Pizza Pie Biweekly Season 2, the opener has occurred, and Gerald has won his 2nd pizza, defeating Riser in the finals, who has won 4 pizzas and is in 4th place with that. So a lot of the regulars still coming back for that. Very important stuff with the pizzas. We'll keep you updated going forward.
2 pizza player being a 4 pizza player, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's he's quite an underdog. He's quite an underdog. Where's Starkiller here, though? Oh, Starkiller actually lost to Cham. 99-0. Wow. Look at that.
Probably, maybe like forfeit or something? Or is that just Oh, I guess Gerald is. I don't know why it's all 1990. Gerald also beat Cham 1990. Maybe that's just how Cham reports scores on Challenge.
Yeah, that might be his thing. All right. So also we have In Depth number 20. We went over some WCS Fall replays, tried to compare Clem's games from against Hearthstone to Clem's games against Neeb. It's kind of a fun little series. You can check that out over on youtube.com/ArtosisTV. All right, the Wardy TV Summer Championship 2019 is taking place from today through the 21st over on Wardy's Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Wardy. And it looks like a Korean Asia/C server playing tournament led to the grand final event. So check that out. Lots of great players in that. All right, the Bulgarian StarCraft League WCS Fall 2019 is taking place September 14th through October 20th. Looks like a reasonable prize pool as well. Check it out on twitch.tv/Bulgarian StarCraft League. The Blazing Series, Reality Season 1. The Blazing Series is something that we were following quite a bit. A Taiwanese tournament, if I recall correctly, that took quite a while to finish up. It looks like some invited players are there, including Strike, who looks like he's about to win the tie spot in the WESG. Haas, of course, the best Taiwanese player. Lemon and Winter. And then some qualifiers are taking place as well. Check it out. africatv.com/AFTWSC2. The Australian Esports Federation SC2 LAN event. They're holding a $5,000 SC2 LAN event on October 5th in Melbourne, Australia, featuring 4 of the world's best players. That is pretty crazy. Definitely check that out if you're in the area. That is a big prize pool, and I'm sure they have some great players there to play for it. All right, the TESPA Collegiate Series StarCraft 2 Team Brawl. Registration closes in 10 days. So if you want to play with your college teammates, some StarCraft 2, definitely check that out. It's on TESPA.org. Epic LAN is coming back October 10th through 13th. There's been a lot of StarCraft tournaments there over the years. Definitely check it out. We have all their information. If you are in the UK, you probably want to go and play in this, or at least watch. All right, this week in Brood War. The Corrupted Cup, I believe all the challenges have ended, so we don't really have too many updates on that. The STPL games are starting 10 days from today. It is finally back on twitch.tv/STPL with Kicks and Rapid. So definitely do check that out. They also have a show match series going on where DM defeated Rev 3-2. And again, that will be on the STPL Twitch channel. The BSL, the Bombastic Star League, Season 7, they've done the group draw. So we have all those groups out there for you within the show notes. You can definitely check this out on Team Liquid as well. Generally, Team Liquid and Liquipedia are the best places to follow Brood War stuff. But it looks like the groups are starting in just a couple days, and I tell you, that is just about a who's who of the foreign scene. So definitely something you want to watch. Some really great games in there. A lot of strong players. All right, the Undermine podcast, episode number 31, is out on makingcomputerdothings.com. It looks like they talked about conferences, AI accessibility for gamers, and the first European Brood War AI meetup in 2019. Check it out if you're interested in the bot scene. Also, phase 2 of the War Chest is unlocking on September 12th. So in, I don't know, like 14 hours, I believe, is when it unlocks. So you can start to get more of those skins. This week in Awesome, looks like at WCS Fall 2019, Time became the first China mainland player to qualify for the WCS Global Finals. So congratulations to Time in this new qualification way. He's the first Chinese to make it. He's killing it. We'll talk more about that when we get to that subject. Also this week in Awesome, Stefano ended a 6-year drought in the round of 8 for WCS Fall. And has a shot named after him at the Meltdown bars consisting of vanilla and black vodka. That sounds like something he'd drink. All right, congrats to Stefano. Definitely had a good run at WCS Fall. I think finally he was in a group that wasn't for Zerg, so congrats to him.
Just waiting for the stars to align for that one.
Yeah, that takes a while. So that's that for this week in StarCraft. I believe we'll do some Cobra's clips and then get into our topics.
One moment while I pull those up.
I like the Twitch chat reaction. There's a lot going on in StarCraft. What is this?
I know.
I had
It's
no
actually
idea.
And this was a light week, to be honest. Sometimes that takes me 45 minutes to get through.
I'm actually always surprised about the segment too. Like every single time, it's like I didn't know about like 90% of these things happening. So I think it's great. They're getting a little bit of exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I love these smaller tournaments and everything, and a lot of countries throwing together their own kind of leagues. I feel like that really builds stuff as well. It's always fun to play with people who speak your language, have good ping with you, you know, have similar life and all that.
Okie doke. Here we go.
Let's do it.
Wow, it's really cool to see a professional WoW streamer try out SC2. I hope you're liking it, Neuro. Good to see you, Gemini. It's quite the meme you've got there. Wow, it's really cool to see a professional.
Excellent. Now we just flex. Is that how it goes? Are we Nate now? I think we nailed it. This is like 2017 Nathanius, 2018 Nathanius, perfect. Oh wait, we need to like flip the camera upside down and shit too. I think that's going a little too far though. I think if I go any further, it'll hit me with the DMCA. You know, I can't. This is clearly just inspirational, but if I go a little further, it's like I'm stealing from him. I don't want to steal from him.
Did he patent that move?
Excellent.
Hellraiser got enough Phoenixes to hold on, so he got the win there. TLO into the knockout brackets, has to face Denver. He's down 0-1.
Oof.
The Von der Wunsch facing elimination, so hopefully he can stay in it, stay calm, focused, and I believe that's being streamed by one of our streams as well. So
Nice.
we'll follow that.
I'm following it right now, but nothing's happened yet. So
Okay. That's game 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. All right.
You already
anyway,
said, he said nothing has happened. Well, he's 1-0.
Nothing has happened in the game. There's no reason to look at it.
All right. Okay. Right. We're done. Right. Well, you know, another disaster of
Fight
death
me, Todd.
segment.
Fight me.
I'm going to be fired at the end of this. It's all their fault. No, it's not. All right. We're going to go to a short break, ladies and gentlemen. And when we return for WCS Fall, we have one more series here from the group stage to determine who's moving on into the round of 16.
I thought it was valid by Nate. That's just Todd being silly.
Hellraiser.
Andrew Todd right there.
That's what you mean. It's just a little bit of dust that accumulates, and you dust it off your skills, and you get back up to speed. It was like when I had 18 days off for the move. I went from being around 5.4k to 5.2k, and I got kicked out of GM. And then after 3 days of playing StarCraft, I got back into GM. I am a Grandmaster StarCraft player. My understanding of the game and my speed and mechanics are at a certain level, and if I'm rusty, then I will simply get the rust off and then kick some motherfucking ass. Thank you very much. That's how it works. I appreciate your concern. Actually, how about I just do a thing for you? Because I was going to do this at some point anyway. I'm just going to do a thing for you.
I enjoy how well this clip
Specifically
represents
based on this
WoW Classic,
discussion.
just walking and
Okay.
walking and walking.
All you do.
For all of my concerned individuals, all the happy buddies who are just filled with questions and worry and all this, okay? This is for you. Alright? You can calm down. You can rest easy, knowing that we're going to be fine. There's still StarCraft about. Root Neuro is still active. Okay? Take a large glass of calm the fuck down, and then have some of that. Happy now? Thank you, Anonymous. Okay, good. I love StarCraft 2. I fucking love this game, and it's my favorite game. And it actually rustles my Jimmy Jim Jims, and people get all like up in arms about me playing a different game for a week. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. How many career games do you have? I have more than this. This is one of my accounts on one server. Okay? So, when you're about to hassle a broadcaster, or you see someone hassling a broadcaster, maybe step in and just clarify some stuff for a motherfucker. Understand? Okay, now we'll go back to our quest. I have a team that's waiting for me. I have a question. Are you still auto-running? No, I stopped.
Well,
and Lastful was watching my back in case there was alliance or something.
That's it. Back to you, Dan.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So, our first topic is about streaming other games as a StarCraft streamer. We definitely have a couple professional streamers on here today, so just kind of looking to see what your experience has been like, Nero. I think that we just got a good chunk of it out of that little clip that you had prepared for us.
Yeah, so one of the points to start with here is, as a StarCraft streamer, that is what we do. Myself and Vibe, we're full-time StarCraft streamers. That's kind of our primary means of business and making a living for ourselves. We're also people who love games, and there are different games that come out that we want to play. And as TLO pointed out, Classic WoW has a bunch of running from place to place. It's a very time-intensive game, so if you're going to play some WoW and make some progress, you're going to have to put in quite a bit of time. So we've both put in, I don't know, I have 8.5 days played, I think. Vibe, do you know what yours is?
Yeah, I'm around 7. For the first week, I think I was sleeping like 2 hours a day, and it was because if you're on like a high pop server, you get like these queues that last for like 6 or 7 hours at a time. So if you barely sleep, you can avoid the queues. You have to like only sleep in the dead time as well. It has to be like somewhere around like 2 to 3 a.m. And then you get back up and you avoid the queues altogether, and you're just going for like 22 hours a day. So
yeah,
it's intense.
Wow. Yeah, it's a pretty epic venture, I think, and it's also a landmark event that's only happening once. I guess you could say it could happen if they re-release the other expansions, but whenever the gates are open, basically people can play the game. There's that sort of marathon race mindset of a lot of people to try to rush to max level, which for people who don't know is level 60. Vibe and I are both level 56 now, I think, so we're pretty close to the finish line, still quite a few hours to go. But for myself, I never played StarCraft 1, StarCraft Brood War. So World of Warcraft was more of my gamer heritage. I ended up getting into StarCraft 2 because my WoW Arena partner said, hey, we should play 2v2s and 3v3s in StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty. So that's how I got into StarCraft 2. It was from WoW and my friends in WoW. It wasn't from StarCraft 1 to StarCraft 2. So for me to be able to play this game and stream it is really fun for me because it gets to show part of my history and love for gaming in general. And this interaction is pretty interesting because as a long-term StarCraft 2 broadcaster, we put in, for me, 6 years of StarCraft streaming full-time as the main game, and I very rarely do other games, so I've established the business as a StarCraft streaming business, and then you have consumers who come view the channel, and they open up the page and they don't see Zerg gameplay, and they're like, my reality has just been shattered. like I had a cornerstone of how I wove the fabric of my understanding of Earth in 2019 together. And at the center point was Neuro streaming Zerg ladder. And I see World of Warcraft and I don't know what to do. And that panic has been expressed by a lot of people. But if I can really lay this out for you, when I play games, there is no more satisfying feeling than defeating an opponent who is a good match for you in 1v1 StarCraft. It is so broad-based, it is so fast, it is so intense. There are so many levels of decision-making, mechanics, reaction, response, crisis management. It is so fulfilling that I think if you realize that, there wouldn't be the same fear or worry that, oh, all the streamers now, they're just going to be sucked into this vortex of classic WoW. I can't watch anyone anymore. Of all these different games, everyone's streaming classic WoW, and I can't see any game content on Twitch. You'll be fine. It's gonna pass. This is a big hype period for people. We're kind of reliving a lot of our youth and the games we played in the past. For myself, I'm adding in some RP elements, so we're doing storytelling and trying to make it an engaging narrative. We have a nice guild where we're making friends and working together. So I've had a blast, and it's like you said, Artosis, I think StarCraft people are usually one game people. It's like StarCraft is video games. That is how you game, and that's what I want all the time. If that's the case, there are some other StarCraft streamers. You can watch them. It's not hard to find StarCraft content.
Certainly true about that. So, Vibe, you streamed your WoW as well?
I did, yeah. I was like, people were actually like questioning my health. They were like, dude, you need to go to bed, man. Like, I went to work, you're on. I came home, you're on. I woke up, you're on. Like, do you ever sleep? And I'm like, no, not really, dude. Like 2 hours a day. Let's keep going.
So when you guys have done this gigantic week or 2 weeks or however long this ended up being of WoW, did you how did it actually affect your streams? Did your viewership go up? Did it go down? Did you find yourself losing viewers / subs? Did you find yourself gaining maybe some new people to your audience that were just looking for, some WoW streamer? I don't know. Like, how did that affect you?
For me, honestly, I've only ever had 2 games that I've ever had success with, and I've tried probably like 15 to do like on the side of StarCraft. Mm-hmm. And WoW is not one of the ones that does successfully. Usually, what'll happen is like if I don't transition from StarCraft to something else, let's say I'm just on WoW. On launch day, it's super hyped, and I actually had a decent viewer count that day compared to like my StarCraft numbers. I had like a consistent like 120 to 150. But usually every day after that, if I just like turn it on, it'll rest around like 40 or 50. And as a streamer, you get like a little bit, I don't know, you have this like sad feeling in yourself a little bit, because like your chat, you look at it, you like read a comment and you're like, wait, I just read that 30 minutes ago and that's still at the top of chat. Like, no one said anything in a long time. And then sometimes you're like, you'll see like 1 comment or 2 comments of something else where it's just something interacting with what you're doing. And then every like 3rd comment is, did you quit StarCraft? Like, are you ever going to go back to that game? I don't know what's going on right now, dude. So I don't know. It does, if you think about it too much, I guess it can kind of like wear on you. And I think my strategy whenever I try to incorporate other games to not like tilt yourself as a streamer is you just turn off the viewer count. So you don't look at it ever. You just time and play the game.
It's an interesting business decision because to answer the question from my end, the viewer count is about 1/3, if not a little bit lower. So we're not doing this. I think some people think that, oh, you're just trying to cash in on the hype train, like Vibe and Neuro just trying to fill their money bags. What? This is a hit to our business. So if we're going to do this, it means that we love something about the game. For me, the thing that I said on the co-optional with Jenna Bain was during the week of launch, I spent more time with my brother than I've ever spent in my entire life, because like Vibe was saying, we cut sleep together to keep leveling really fast. Yeah. So there was that camaraderie of shared experience together that you couldn't have gotten with StarCraft. So it does have some really unique and rich elements to the game. Sure, there are a lot of very tedious and very boring aspects of the game. It's not a perfect game, but it's a game that is loved by many. So that's kind of the context for that. And then for the, are you retiring from StarCraft? If I can give an example real fast, let's say Vibe is the best violin player in all of Colorado, and he's the first chair concert violinist, and he leads everything. He does the solos. He's the star of the show. Say Vibe takes 2 weeks and he plays piano. Would people be knocking at his door, panic, like, are you ever going to play the violin again? The hell is this? His mastery of the violin would be so integrated in his hand, in his brain. Like, he is a violinist. He's the best violinist in the state. And he plays the piano piece, and people are losing their minds. Like, hang in there, calm down. And if you want a StarCraft, like StarCraft, this is the period where some StarCraft people are playing WoW. And if you're trying to move up in leagues, you can get practice for a few weeks, maybe a month, that they're not getting, and you can move up. So now's your chance. To turn off the stream, turn on the practice.
The ridiculous thing is, almost nobody would say anything if you didn't stream at all for a week or two. You wouldn't have people reaching out to you on Twitter like, are you done streaming? But as soon as you turn on another game, panic turns on. I sometimes, very rarely, stream Dota. And I think for me, it's not as bad because I'm a professional StarCraft 2 player and not as much as streamer. So I think people don't freak out as much. They are not going to think, well, TLO, are you switching to Dota? Well, obviously not, long shot for that. If I could, maybe. Look at those prize monies. I could host a lot of StarCraft 2 tournaments for that, cashing in and, distributing the money back into StarCraft. But it is a little bit odd how emotional some people get about it, just spending even an hour not playing StarCraft 2. I've had people come to my stream for that as well. And it is interesting, but I think it is best to just either ignore it or engage as newer. Like once in a while, explain yourself, and other than that, there's no reason to get upset about it. I think people just be people sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's why you have to turn the viewer count off, at least for me, because every time I would look at that, it's like a mild tilt every time. You're like, oh my god, my viewer count's like it dropped by 5, and only at 35 viewers right now. Like I'm going negative right now, and it's like no one hear what I'm normally going to do here. And then someone's like, dude, when's the last time you played StarCraft? You might have even played it like earlier that day. It's like I played it like 3 hours ago, man. What are you talking about? I'm not a StarCraft slave here. Come on, dude. But yeah, you definitely have to like not fully engage to it. Like even if it's actually making you upset, because it'll totally just like turn everyone off from watching your stream as it is anyways. Like the 30 people you have will be like, oh, okay, this guy's just like super salty about everything. I'm gonna head off.
One of the best things that I've noticed about it is because it is a slower form game, there's more room for long conversation. So if there's a streamer who you like as a person, maybe you like their personality, you want to talk to Vibe, if he's streaming WoW, he has more free attention to devote to that because he's not like Micro and Queen Infestor drops like constantly. He has like a gnome that's just running. And you could talk to him if you want to talk to him about his career, his life, his opinions on stuff. He's got time. He's got time to talk to you right then. If he's doing like Queen Transfuse, Infestor, like Infested Terrans, like Fungus, all this, no, he can't talk to you right now. He's occupied.
I think StarCraft 2 is actually in a little bit of a weird spot because of what you're saying is you have so little time as a streamer while you're playing to adapt with your viewership that I think there's fewer people that purely watch you because of you, while there's a lot of other games or variety streamers where people purely watch because of the personality. But our personalities are so tied into StarCraft, even our play styles, and people are watching that combination of StarCraft 2 and a little bit of us. And I think that's why it's so difficult for StarCraft 2 streamers to transfer their viewership over to other games, because our community is so hardcore, but also because of the nature of StarCraft being such a difficult game to stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like, I think people, I liked what you mentioned, like your personality is tied in with StarCraft, even through your play and everything. That's something I always like to bring up, is like you kind of express yourself through the game anyway. So even if you're not talking, it's like, I don't know, you can kind of see like, for instance, I've been playing chess against Fear Dragon lately. He's like, oh my god, you play this just like you play fucking StarCraft. It's just like you express yourself when you're playing these games, which makes it kind of interesting. But about the decline in viewership and all the people asking questions, is it better for your business as a StarCraft 2 streamer to take those weeks off, like TLO mentioned? Like you could literally just be like, I'm on vacation for 2 weeks, guys, and no one would really wonder about that if you left the note up or something. Or is it better to continue to stream and stream something else that might detract from your viewership?
I think for the average person who just is looking for a break, it'd probably be better for you to take a vacation, because I do actually feel like you impact your numbers negatively. Like I feel like there's always this rebuild you have to do a little bit when you come back to the scene of your main game. For us, it's all StarCraft. For me personally, though, I don't know, man. I don't like taking breaks. I like to just like game all the time. So like my vacation is literally like, I'm gonna go play WoW for 2 weeks and I'll come back. But it's never so bad that you can't recover from it. It's usually just like you'll be streaming for like you might go stream a different game for like 1, 2, 3 weeks, and you come back and it only takes like a week to recover. So it's not the end of the world, but you definitely feel the hit while you're doing it if you focus on that.
Would you agree with that, Nero?
For my stuff, I've been planning the like character and the content and the story for a long time. So I'm role playing a Tauren warrior whose name is
Braun Taffleton Mistrunner. He's a Tauren warrior of the Mistrunner tribe.
And I spent a good 2 to 3 weeks practicing the Warcraft 3 Tauren voice line stuff like,
may my ancestors watch over me.
Stuff like that. So when I'm playing the game and we have funny moments, I'm building the lore of this character, so it is its own form of content that some people have enjoyed quite a bit. The problem is, like, if you switch to a different game and you're a StarCraft person, you do WoW content, you're going to be way below all of the WoW people who did WoW before and now they're doing WoW Classic. They have the lion's share of that. But for me, the content has been really fun. I've been enjoying it a lot. It allows me to do more voice acting and storytelling. We've even had some community people write out a character backstory, kind of like you would for D&D, for their WoW character, and then I'll read it in a sort of narration voice on stream. So we have people in the guild with backstory. So it is a little bit closer to a D&D experience for some people. And I think that's one of the best parts of the game, is that it creates a lot of openings for people to tell a cool story. As a game on its own, it does leave a lot to be desired. And I think the more modern iterations of WoW streamline the game experience, but the community experience in Classic is very, very rich and very interesting. So for me, it's a definite yes on streaming, and I expected to have a hit for my metrics, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I kind of want to say something else really quick, if you guys don't mind, about what he just said. Especially you guys who came from Brood War. I feel like there's something about WoW that Blizzard did, like in Classic compared to retail. And I think they used to do the same thing more in Battle.net 1.0 compared to the new Battle.net 2.0, which is just a bigger sense of community. Because back in the day, like because I also played WoW back in the day, and that's why I'm so amped to play it. But I remember back in the day, when I first played WoW, I met a lot of people, and I still talk to these people, the same guys, and I play games with them all the time over the last like 15 years or so. And I feel like the same thing happened to me, where I met some people off like Brood War and Warcraft 3 as well, and I still talk to them all the time. But nowadays, in like Battle.net 2.0, I haven't really, or like if I were to play like retail WoW, I haven't really met people through the game itself nearly as much, just because the way games were designed before I don't know, they just had this like for like RTS style games, it was more of chat channels and community. Like a lot of times I would go into like a popular chat where I knew everyone and everyone like knew me. We just would hang out, talk. Sometimes I'd log in to play. I would just end up talking to people for a while and then play a game 2 hours later. And kind of the same thing happened on WoW, where I would, the game forces you to like work with other people, and you actually want to make connections to other people because it makes everything more efficient for you. So it encourages you to do that. And it's something that I feel like Blizzard's kind of like detracted from over the years with the newer games. And I think this, with how well it's done, with how well WoW Classic has done, I feel like it's more, I feel like it's a really good thing, even outside of no matter what game you play, if you like Blizzard, because I don't know, I hope this makes Blizzard realize, in my opinion at least, that community aspects are way more important than they kind of thought they were. And like, for instance, like making StarCraft 2 without chat channels initially was, in my opinion, like terrible, like not good. So yeah, I think it has deeper seated things that will hopefully increase the quality in a lot of aspects for future games.
It's pretty funny that both StarCraft 2 with the chat channels and the WoW Classic had this Blizzard moment of you think you do, but you don't actually want that. I actually can't believe he spent the first year of StarCraft 2 without any chat channels, I think. Which is crazy to look back onto. But I think Viper has a really good point. It's unfortunate that, I think it makes sense how games were streamlined. For example, having a good matchmaking like in StarCraft 2 compared to the completely useless ladder and then defunct ladder in Brood War. But, I don't need to talk to a person. I could play 10 hours of StarCraft 2 every day without ever interacting with somebody, and I could even become a grandmaster player doing that. And Brood War, you needed to talk to people. If you didn't have practice partners, you couldn't go anywhere. Nobody would play with you. I mean, later on in the IC Cup, I guess you could be kind of doing the same grind, but it's nice to see WoW Classic is doing so well. And yeah, I do hope that might influence future Blizzard decisions.
I think the key point that's the common thread between a lot of these Brood War Classic and StarCraft 2 is that the true beauty of the game comes from the interaction between the players. It's not necessarily the pizzazz within the game itself. So that's kind of why laddering for 8 hours is interesting, because every match is unique, because the two human players make unique decisions and unique mistakes every time that create a unique story.
Yeah, and even if you never talk to somebody, you still have a relationship with a player, right? It's like, I really hate playing against this guy. He's such a cheesy person, always doing this, and I really hate losing to him. So or positive, I always have really good matches against the player, and it's really fun. And I think WoW Classic is way better at that, because you don't have all the flight paths, and that's why all the walking is good.
Yeah.
I actually have a question for you, Vibe. You mentioned earlier that you've tried streaming 13 games or something, but only one other one did well. Could you fill us in on that?
They were all RTS. Everyone that did well was RTS. So same genre. Like at Warcraft 3, whenever I switched to that, I would always retain almost 100% viewership. So I'm really excited about Reforged because of that. Because I love Warcraft 3. It's one of my favorite games that I've ever played. And the other one that did well was the first time They Are Billions released. Because everyone was like, "Oh, this game's interesting," and I did the whole not the campaign, but there was there were 4 maps where you had to beat one by one, and it was actually kind of difficult to just get over, because if you stop paying attention for 1 second, you could just die, and it makes for a lot of funny moments when you're just like, "What the hell? A zombie's in my tents," and everything just falls spirals out of control. But the first time I played that game, it was great. Everyone loved it. They were super into it, and they had a patch recently where I went back for the first time in a year, and I don't know. I guess people got They Are Billions out because it wasn't nearly as good. It wasn't bad, but it just didn't it didn't have nearly the success of the first time. But those 2 games in StarCraft are the only ones that do really well when I transition out.
Okay. Have you had any, Nero, that you would consider a really successful stream that wasn't StarCraft 2?
Dota 2 is the one that I have the most success with. Usually what I'll do is I'll put my stream title as StarCraft 2 GM Learning Dota. And people like to see the mouse mechanics of, I have good mouse accuracy from playing StarCraft, but I have no game knowledge. So the people who have played Dota for many, many years, they can do some backseat gaming, and that's helpful for me because I actually don't follow the meta. I don't really study and research, and it gets patched pretty often. So that creates a really fun interaction where I get a bunch of new, unique people who are giving me tips here or there that most of them are very helpful. So that's probably been the most successful game for me to stream. The WoW stuff, I do have quite a bit of overlap. Many people played WoW originally. So I've had some people Sham2 came in and he was talking about how he was playing WoW back in the day, what his memories were. He's not playing it this time because he felt like he played enough back then, which is totally fair, but he can still hang out and be positive throughout that content. So people who do that as well, I think is really nice for streamers, just being supportive and kind of engaging with what's going on, even if you're not jumping on the hype train per se.
Okay.
Yeah,
any final thoughts on streaming other games than StarCraft 2?
I would probably want to say that I'm really thankful for the StarCraft community being so passionate for StarCraft, because if they weren't, then I wouldn't have been able to build business streaming it. So this is a pretty short term, little bit of friction and discomfort and stuff with a bunch of people playing Classic. And I know a lot of people are hungry for the StarCraft content, but I wouldn't be able to be here on the Pylon show if it wasn't for people who love watching StarCraft streams. So I'm super, super thankful for that. And I'll be getting back to it, my plan is to be sort of like a 80-20 where we have StarCraft for like 6 to 7 hours, and then Classic would be the evening cool down after getting kind of tired and stuff. Whereas this initial period is the rush to 60. So I've been going pretty hard with that, but I'm very grateful. Thank you everyone for supporting StarCraft. It's not the most mainstream game, but I feel like we make up for our numbers with passion. So thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Nerost said. Thank you to everyone in the StarCraft community as well, because it is honestly a really reassuring feeling that if I ever want to take a break and play something else, I can always be like, I'll just go back to StarCraft, and without fail, StarCraft always supports, and I'm always like, this is why it's my main game. I don't ever think I've wanted to play a different game besides StarCraft, because I'm definitely someone who likes to play a lot, and I've never found anyone or wanted to play with anyone all the time on my stream anyways. I don't want to have like a co-streamer with me, more or less. I don't know, I'm describing it very well, but yeah, like being able to play a 1v1 game that I can play all the time, and it's just fun. So that is the reason why I've stuck to StarCraft myself for so long. And yeah, it's nice to have cooldown breaks to like invigorate yourself to want to grind more ladder every once in a while. But yeah, shout out to the StarCraft community for being so passionate, like Nero was saying, because you guys definitely are very, very passionate, and it's very appreciated.
Cool. All right. Well, great insight from you guys. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and switch subjects now over. I don't know what this graphic is on the screen. Oh my God. But let's switch subjects now over to WCS Fall in Montreal that just finished up. Obviously, TLO, you were there. What were your impressions first off, before we get into the actual games and the players and all that? What was your impression now after a couple seasons over in Kiev, with Starladder, of going back to Dreamhack to do it? How did that work out?
Well, I think, I don't mind Dreamhacks in general, but I think what was difficult to return to was just the unavoidable amount of noise and darkness that comes with a Dreamhack, and just outside factors that are not in your control as a player. I remember playing a match, and we had a beautiful Rocket League stage next to the StarCraft 2 player area, and they had a lot of beautiful lighting that would move around when something would happen in their game. And I remember being hit right in the eye several times while playing. So in that regard, Kiev is nice because it's in a smaller place. It's very controlled in their own studio. Obviously you're not going to have something like that happening because they just have to focus on StarCraft and Dreamhack. You have all this other stuff going on. But it's also fun to be in a bigger venue. Kiev is relatively small. It's nice to have a bigger stage with more audience. It feels a little bit more epic. So from that perspective, I like it more. But from a purely I want to play and I want to play as good as I can perspective, I like Kiev more.
So which trade-off would you go with as a pro gamer? Because we could go even further, right? Where it's like, okay, maybe Dreamhack is about as loud and bright as you can get with the flashing lights and the big fans and everything, whereas Kiev might be in the middle. And then there could even be like studio ones, like back in the old WCS days, right? Where you're just playing in a studio, so it's like very focused. What do you think is actually the best out of those? Where would you go if you got to just decide? And no one knew it was you deciding.
If I got to decide fully, I would still do something like Dreamhack, but I would make sure things are a little bit better for players. But there would be more budget. You could have StarCraft in a ideally StarCraft players in the soundproof like boxes, and you have higher curtains so lights from a different stage can come in. But I think in reality, as a player, I would prefer Kiev. From that perspective, because I think if it's fully in the studio, it also kind of takes away a little bit from the competitive offline experience. It wouldn't be the same if we just be playing WCS from home, the most extreme case, and then you have audience on the stage and it's on a screen, but the players are just sitting at home perfectly comfortable. It wouldn't be the same. Having the adrenaline and actually having people face the offline issues, I think is also interesting, because we see certain players deal with that better than others. So it's good storytelling. But yeah, obviously as a player still I prefer not to have light beams while
Sure.
playing.
Of course. And actually, one quick question that just came to mind for Vibe and Nero here. You guys are obviously strong GM Zerg players on the same continent. Does it enter your mind that like, oh, maybe I should go play Montreal, or does that just not really fit what you're doing right now as a StarCraft 2 player, or what? How do you make that decision?
For me, it's, I don't know, like I just always related to like when I used to be a pro, and I used to practice way harder than I do now. I don't even practice at all anymore. Like I used to study builds, I used to put in tons of hours. So when I think about going to a tournament nowadays, I feel like I'm just gonna set myself up to be depressed because I'm gonna go up and just lose and be like, well, that sucked. So that's why I don't really go.
Yeah, sure. Nero, how about you? Do you think about it?
From my perspective, it depends on the cost of attending, lodging, and then playing and stuff. So I played in Dreamhack Austin twice, I think, and then the third time I was waitlisted and I couldn't play, which was like, but there's that. For someone who's a streamer, if you really want to show a good tournament result, usually you want to do a bunch of try-hard practice leading up to it. You want to have some planned builds for your matchups on certain maps, which I think is best to do off stream, so you can have some element of surprise. If you're streaming 100% of your games, then people basically know what you're up to, and it's a lot harder to focus fully on the game. Another thing too is commentary really slows down the pace of how you think about StarCraft. So if you're playing the game and giving commentary, you're basically explaining the current game state, and you're talking about what could potentially happen moving forward and what has happened. So there's a whole layer of conversation that your brain is engaged in instead of focusing fully on the next fast move you can make that's good. So for a player who is like lights out, just really try hard focus practice, they're playing the game at a different pace from someone who's playing it with commentary. So I think Pig probably did it the best from what I've seen. He took something like 2 months off stream, just totally off. And that was when he got his super good WCS run, like through Premier League and beyond, where he has that really awesome like fist bump gif and whatnot. But you really have to invest in not streaming if you really want to post those results. For me, I'm really happy with what I do. I could take a crack at tournament stuff, but that would be investment in turning the stream off and cutting the business a little bit. And then you're weighing that against what are the chances that I get money from placing a tournament.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, 1 second,
guys. No worries.
I got a little girl grabbing me here. 1 second.
I agree with you, Nero. That's the other reason for me too. Like I like where my stream's going with StarCraft. Like I have these moments with my stream where I'll be like, I really, really like where we're at right now. It just feels really good. It's a lot more casual than a pro experience, because a pro experience, your emotions are so high and so low all the time. Like you have like these moments where you'll work so hard for something, and you might even come very close to achieving it, or you could even achieve what your goal was, and you'll have this like super high, and you'll be on top of the world. You'll post it everywhere. Everyone will be talking about it, like, "Wow, I saw you on whatever stream, and good job for doing that. That's awesome. You're doing great." And then you have these like really low lows where you put in so much effort, but then you just kind of like let's say you just unfortunately lose your match, and you're like, "Well, I got knocked out early. I worked so hard for this. This is terrible." It just feels really bad. And you got to wait for like the next time. You just got to bring yourself back up and like practice and get ready for the next round, whenever that it's going to be. And with streaming, it's just like a consistent good feeling if your stream is doing well. It's just you never have this like low, like you don't have, sometimes you do have these high highs if you have like an amazing day, but you just have, I don't know. It's like you're always building your own brand, and there's no gambling in it, because I feel like tournaments, there is a portion of gambling because you don't know who you're going to get. You don't know how the bracket's going to develop. And no matter how hard you work, sometimes you might just get a bad draw. At least that's how I always felt when I was in tournaments. And I don't know, it's always like a crushing feeling if you work so hard for something and then you just have a really bad draw and you lose, and you're like, well, next time.
Would you agree with that, TLO?
I mean, yeah, certainly. Being a pro that is, especially if you're a pro that is at the verge of being pretty good, but you're not Cyril, you're not me. You know, those people don't have those feelings. They go to tournaments and they are, you know. But yeah, it sucks because, you know, a lot of times you invest a ton of time. If you don't have a pro team, you invest your own money. And if you look at the people that at WCS go home with no money, it's not, it's good players. Future, for example, went home with nothing. Silky did go home with nothing. Bly went home with nothing. I went home with nothing. So, even and then if you look at the next tier, which is just $1,250, that's not crazy money for, being gone for 5 days. That, it's still a lower rate than most, contractors would get per day working at an event, in a different industry at least. And so prize money is finicky, and there's definitely a lot of, I know there's a lot of pros that kind of wish, they look at some streamers and think, I should have just done this for 5 years, there's a lot of streamers that have made a lot more money than relatively high-tier pros, and it definitely seems like a lifestyle that's a little bit more stable. It does come with its own difficulties, though, because I think as a pro, you get away a little bit more with having a chaotic lifestyle. While as a streamer, I think there's another stress that you need to be so consistent, because if you don't stream enough numbers, your viewership drops, your subs drop. Whenever you take a week off, you lose money. While as a pro, you don't have that direct experience. So I don't know which one is easier. But yeah, tournaments are difficult, and I definitely wouldn't blame for Wipe or Neuro not going, because it's fun, but it's a big investment.
Yeah, it's I think to take it to one step further as well, I think everything you said is totally right. I 100% agree with you. I think the biggest selling point for me to switch from pro gaming to streaming initially was I don't have to win to be successful at streaming. I just have to be there. And as long as I'm I'm just consistent, which I'm going to be. If I'm a pro gamer, I'm practicing every day. If I'm a streamer, I'm just streaming every day. But if you have you're doing everything, but you don't win as a pro gamer, it kind of just falls apart. And you're like, well, I got to start over and do it again for the next tournament. But as a streamer, if I have a really bad day, people are like, oh man, don't feel so bad. It's okay. You're doing great, man. You're like, thanks, guys. Thanks for the sub.
Yeah, it's much more like a normal job. When you're streaming, it's fine to have days where you're only at 40%. As a pro, when you go to a tournament, you have to be ideally at 100%. And if you just happen to, so many things can happen. You can get sick. You just have a bad day of sleep. You ate something that doesn't make you feel great, or you just, for some reason can't focus in that moment. There are so many factors, and boom, you're out, nothing, while, when you're streaming. So what? I had one bad day where I wasn't in the best mood streaming. That is not gonna, ruin my monthly income.
Yeah, exactly.
One aspect that I think many people don't understand about Twitch streaming as a profession is that it is an entertainment job where you need to captivate the attention of the audience over the course of many hours, which involves stuff like charisma, speaking skills, humor. It's not just you flip on a broadcast and you play a video game. I think many people think, oh, streaming is the dream job. You just play video games for a living. You're not just playing video games for a living. You're trying to captivate and entertain an audience. And time is precious. There are a lot of good TV shows and movies that people could watch or games they could play. So for them to choose to watch your stream is a pretty big choice, and you should give them a good reason to make that choice. So there is a lot of pressure to bring something fresh and exciting to the table every day. Even if it's not at the same caliber of play as WCS tier, you still want to show good games, and you still want to be funny and entertaining for the viewership.
I see what I've been doing wrong. I show a lot of bad games, and I'm angry most of the time.
But it is entertaining.
Yeah, I guess it is entertaining. When I lose more, actually more people watch. It's really fucking weird and backwards.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of Twitch clips on Reddit from you being happy about good play.
No one clips that. It doesn't happen that often. They should. It's a rare thing. All right, really great side discussion there. Actually, I like seeing the insight into that, how to make those decisions. But let's talk about the actual WCS Fall tournament somewhat. TLO, you were on the ground. I don't know how much you guys watched because you were busy playing WoW. game traders, but obviously chime in with anything you think here. Your overall impression of the tournament, TLO, not like the way the production or anything like we already talked about, but more the quality of the games compared to some of the other stops. Was this a very exciting tournament, do you think? A lot of great matches? Did it go exactly, kind of how you thought it would, or were there more upsets? What are you thinking?
Well, I feel like WCS Fall storyline-wise was in a little bit of a difficult spot because we had such a consistent, ranking when it comes to the top players. I'm actually not fully there right now. Looking at the points, I think pretty much the top 8 just stayed the top 8, right?
That's right. Here, I'll give you the stat right now on that. So the top 8 of this WCS event, 7 of the top 8 are the BlizzCon top 8, who, by the way, the BlizzCon top 8 is exactly the same as the GSL versus the World top 8. And the only person not in the top 8 was Showtime, who narrowly lost the previous round to Hero Marine. So if he had been in another spot in the bracket, maybe if he had played against Stefano instead, we could have had exactly the top 8. And something very similar happened last year where it was 1 off at Montreal before BlizzCon. So it's that level of stability of the WCS circuit players is mind-boggling that that's happened like that 2 years in a row. But go ahead, continue, please.
Yeah, so I think it's actually, as a player, I think it's amazing that we have such consistency, and it shows, our tournament systems are good, balance and maps are good. We have a pretty healthy mix. We have 3 Zergs, 2 Protoss, 3 Terrans. That's perfect balance, pretty much. So from that perspective, I'm incredibly happy. I think that shows it's a healthy game. But for the viewers, I think it would have been nice to have an upset or 2. And I think because games have been so consistent, maybe we also didn't have the best matches. I think we, again, had like a good amount of 3-0s in the quarterfinals. So
the round of 16 were all 3-0s except, again, Hero Marine versus Showtime, which both are top 8 players. So that is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's pretty rough. I think we still had some good games. Unfortunately, the semifinals also 3-0 and 3-1, and finals 4-1. So obviously, result-wise, it's not what you dream of as a tournament organizer.
Yeah.
And I didn't. It's obviously a side effect of actually being at the event. I didn't actually watch too many of the games. I watched Stefano and Massa, actually VODs yesterday, and I did watch the finals. And Stefano beating Massa was a little bit surprising, but they also weren't, mind-blowing games. And I think the Serral Reynor finals was good. I wish Reynor would have played a little less quote-unquote gimmicky. Because I think Serral, the more you play against them, and I feel for the Reynor-Serral rivalry that the more they'll meet each other, the more it'll be in favor of Serral, because he plays a much more, stable style of StarCraft 2, while Reynor tries to find holes. But if you've played against the same player so many times, he'll just fix that because it's Serral, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it was the best tournament we've ever had. But it's nice to have that confirmation. Okay, those are the 8 best player the WCS circuit has to offer, and hopefully that'll lead into a very exciting global finals.
If I can add a note about Serral versus Reynor, I think that's one of the best matchups for illustrating how StarCraft strategy and style works, because like TLO was saying, Serral plays a very stable, solid style, and that's how I learned poker. The way that it was described as playing solid is playing in a way that is not exploitable. So you can't scout Serral and say, oh, this is his opening and I'm going to exploit that. He tries to progress by investing in the best, least exploitable thing, and then using that investment and moving to the next least exploitable thing. Yeah. So in ZEZ, that ends up being some kind of progression of +1 ranged roaches, +2 ranged, +1 carapace, burrow, and tunnel claws. It has such a high skill ceiling. It's very sturdy. He can respond to everything. He doesn't really take risks. Reynor, on the other hand, he plays with pizzazz, where he's taking stuff like melee, which I think is one of the most distinctly pizzazz upgrades you could take early on, to try to get some clear advantage to put him in a different state where he can exploit maybe some oversafe play from Serral. But for ZVZ, I think that's one of the best rivalries to illustrate that difference.
And just to add to that, because you're saying least exploitable, which by the way, when I mean stable, I don't mean that he's only playing macro. Part of being stable is that Sarah is absolutely capable of going for Nidosul and or for different aggressive strategies as well. Because I remember about a year ago, you pretty much could play 3-hatch openers against Cyril 100% of the time, drone, and that was one of the ways you could exploit him, which isn't so much the case anymore. He's definitely willing to also bust out an aggressive play, and ever since then, he's become just even more solid.
Yeah, his ZVZ win rate seems to be returning to what he wants it at, as opposed to occasionally losing. He's pretty crazy. I think a good way to put it is, I think Cyril is the closest to like a Nash equilibrium within StarCraft 2. He's like treading the line closer than anyone else to exactly what you are able to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Very similar to like Flash in StarCraft 1, where you're like, oh, you can't, there's nothing you can do, really? Like, if you get this good, there's it's like, no, you have to be as good as him. Sorry. That's basically how to beat him, is you have to get to that same god tier level where you can win every event.
Yeah, one aspect that isn't always super obvious to some players is the pace and tempo that the two players are playing. Because for a player like Cyril, he is playing solid. There are many other people who play solid at their tier. The difference is the speed that he's progressing from stage to stage. And that's by eliminating all the mistakes that people have, like being supply blocked at 36 as Zerg. Happens to everybody except him and many of the top players. That doesn't happen. So he's basically ironed out all of those kinks in his solid progression all the way up to 200 supply, and really just smashing people in ways that there's just a wall that they have encroaching upon them, and they're getting trash compacted.
And he's so incredible at having that level of play in really long games too. Maybe I can play like Cyril for 5 minutes, and maybe then there's other people who can play like as well as Cyril for 7 minutes. But the longer the game goes, the more mistakes accumulate, and I think he just makes way fewer mistakes in the long run. Even just when it comes to big decisions, it's very rare to see Cyril being in an 18-minute game and suddenly losing his whole army because of one bad decision, and that happens to pros all the time, because it's difficult to stay this focused in a StarCraft 2 match for this long, and then especially StarCraft 2 is pretty rough, because really you can make one misstep of your army or have one engagement which you think is good but it actually turns out to be terrible, and Cyril just doesn't make these big picture mistakes. He's extremely good at realizing when something is gonna go bad and understanding, I just sacrifice a base, but as long as I'm my army and I'm Cyril, you will make a bigger mistake than I will eventually. And so he's seeing that is really impressive.
I'm actually really excited that you said specifically that, because I was talking about this like maybe a week or two ago with someone, I forget, maybe No Regret or something, but about how Cyril sizes up engagements better than everyone else in the game. Like, of course he does kind of everything better than everyone, but you almost like never see him take an engagement unless he's going to win. And as a caster who I'm seeing the whole battle, and all I basically do is watch StarCraft, and I watch replays and stuff, so I see it from both sides. Even the engagements where I'm like, I don't know if you should take this.
Yeah.
And he takes it and he wins it, and it's like, oh damn, he never goes and takes a battle and then loses it. It's crazy. It's just he only battles when he's gonna win. It's amazing.
I know, it's actually really almost uncanny, because I know I've had games against him where I'm like upper ramp with Roach Ravager, and I think I'm not sure, Cyril, I don't think there's enough roaches to break them, and then I just lose the fight, and I'm like, okay, I guess you know better.
It's a pretty impressive aspect of visual intuition, because you have certain elements of keeping track of who got slightly ahead in the early game. Many times the viewer doesn't know that. Sometimes the players don't exactly know that, because the opponent can make some mistakes that you didn't have vision of. So being able to account for who is ahead in the game state and whether or not you should push in, and then also just looking at the screen, there are armies with a ton of units on either side, and if upgrades are involved, it's a pretty complex calculation, and the brain is basically trying to say, overall, is this a good idea for me or not? And the intuition of Cyril there, like you're saying, he can just see the screen, he remembers what happened in the previous action in the match, and then he can make the better decision than most other people about whether to attack, retreat, counterattack, whatever.
Yeah, for me, I've looked at some of his replays, and I feel like Cyril has a level of control. Like, I'm not talking about like unit control, but he has like a level of control of the game that I feel like most people don't have, and I feel like that comes from just his. I don't know. Like, it's like again, the guy is amazing at so many things, but his map awareness is ridiculously insane. And every time I've ever looked at like any of his games compared to others, I'll be like, he's so active at always like checking up on everything. Like he's always scouting every single time he needs to be scouting. He's always figuring out everything that needs to be figured out. And like I feel like he has this like sense of just knowing. Like even if he doesn't see it, he knows it's still coming because you can like deduce what's going on in the base and stuff, even if you don't fully see it, like an army, for instance. I don't know. Like it just having like that the repetitive like mindset to like constantly upkeep everything the entire time and never let it go away, kind of like what TLO was saying, where he just does it the entire time. And I feel like it's something that is only he's really able to do that for that long. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like that's one of the reasons why he's so good and why he never takes bad fights. And it's just a level of like control of everything on the game, and he can like manipulate how his opponent is with how he wants it to go. Like he can just think about like, this is where I want you to go instead, and we're going to go there, and that's going to happen, and I'm going to micro that, and game's going to end.
You know, all this talk about Cyril, we should mention, he only lost one map. So it was like 17-1, I believe. And the one map he lost, that game 1 against Raynor, which was insane. That was such a good game. Definitely go watch that. I actually thought he was going to take that. I think he was very slow on the caustic spray or whatever that's called from the corruptor.
Yes,
like,
yes.
When I saw that position develop, I'm like, Cyril's got this. You just go spray down every building. There's no way to stop that right now. There's way too many corruptors, and they just kind of sat there for a while. So a very weird situation for him to even lose the map.
Yeah, he made at a few points in the game, he also used all his corruptors to snipe one base. And the cooldown is actually quite long in caustic spray. So I don't know if it wasn't on cooldown yet, or if he was just idling them. I think he was idling them on top of just using all corruptors on one building, but he should have won that game. And I actually really like that corruptor roach style. I've played it quite a bit myself, and theoretically you should always beat Muta play. But you can get in weird situations where you think you can finish the game, and then there's too many mutas after all. And but if you keep scouting with speed overseers and see your opponent is just making more mutas and not switching to lurkers, theoretically you can always just max out on corruptors with +1 armor and roaches with +2 armor, and then you might lose all your corruptors, but they're just gonna lose everything. But I too think he could have won that game, but at least he got people hyped for potentially Raynor.
Yeah. That was exciting. It seemed like it was going to be another close good one, but such is life.
The hesitation, if I can give one note there, maybe because it was a fairly new situation. So one of the things that tends to be a trend where if you've repeated a scenario many, many times, you already know what you're going to do and you have to think about it. Whereas that like Muta versus Corruptor base race, maybe TLO knows more about this. How often does that happen?
Oh no, totally. Like how often are you actually base trading, like rushing down, killing geysers by splitting corruptors, and like does anyone really have the math out in their head? Like I should split 4 corruptors per building right now because of cooldowns and how quickly they ramp because there's like 1 spore and a queen on creep right now.
Yeah,
it's like that's pretty complicated.
and I think there were still mutas alive to the very end of the game, so it's also very scary to split off your corruptors. If you just send a few corruptors, you might lose so many corruptors that you actually can't fight the mutas anymore. So ideally, you need to like guard your corruptors, and only a few of them caustic spray, and then it just gets weird.
Yeah, it gets really weird. And then the other ones can guard those ones while the cooldowns come off. It's like, hey, no, this is real stuff though. And the funny thing is, I know in like a year or two, people are going to be real good at that. We're going to be like, oh, do you guys remember 2 years ago when Cyril didn't know how to do this, but now he's killing all the buildings with corruptors?
Now it's a standard meta.
So do you guys have any big disappointments or big surprises from WCS Fall? Was there like anyone that over-delivered in your estimation or anyone that under-delivered?
Well, I mean, Stefano, obviously. I think nobody expected
was that an over delivery? Because every tournament I look at his brackets and stuff, and he's always in like a stupid. It'll be like Cyril and Lambo and Stefano and Bly, and I'm like, why do you always have that group? You were never that good at ZVZ, you know. So is this just like? Is this RNG evening out, or do you think this is this him way playing above his level?
No, I think you're making a fair assessment. And he's sitting at like 6.7k MMR on better, so that's a top 8 player right there. So for sure, but just after having it not happen this many times, you didn't necessarily expect it. And what was his group? Time, Gerald, Lemon. Okay, so he didn't have the craziest group. Gerald is a good player, but definitely would rate.
He won the pizza pie this week, so. I mean,
yeah,
we know he's got the skills.
But I would say Stefano 2-0 over Time is a little bit of a surprise. You know, Time is incredibly strong, and he has that, you know, Korean silver Terran versus Zerg. So I think that's a big result. And then Group A, I think Future going last place and Scarlet third place, both being, you know, well, not eliminated, but being knocked down in lower bracket is a little bit of a surprise in that group, I'd say.
Yeah. Any favorite matches from you guys that you've seen? Must-see games, must-see matches, anything like that for people that haven't gotten to catch too much of the tournament?
I liked Neeb versus Cyril just because I liked how Cyril manipulated that matchup. It was beautiful. It was really good.
Cool. I enjoyed Cyril versus Raynor. I'm a Cyril fan. When they face, I cheer for Cyril because I like the solid approach to the game. And sometimes I get frustrated by like an upgrade that I didn't scout and stuff like that. And seeing him respond to those and be able to like press those openings. So him going for a lot of the Nidus plays is basically him accumulating enough of that solid Roach Queen value. And then seeing the opponent went for maybe some Ling Bane investment too much, but then they're going into Roach and he puts the Roach Nidus Queen value like right between that and then takes the game. So that's very educational for me. And I really like watching their series.
Sure. How about you, TLO? Any matches that you really, really loved?
I liked Zero's Hero Marine. I think even though the score was 3-0 in the end, I think Hero Marine played really well. And, you know, 5% more and could have looked very different. Hero Marine has been impressing me a lot lately in general. I think he has one of the most insane macros, at least outside of Korea when it comes to Terrans. You know, somehow he always has 4 command centers more than most other people at minute 10. And yeah,
he's getting scary good right now. Actually, I feel like in the next year or two, he is going to be right up there with Cyril. To be honest, like he is so legit, and he's approaching the game in such a way that it's like the scary approach that Cyril took. Like we saw Cyril coming a long time ago, right? Because he's not being gimmicky at all. He's just figuring out every little basic, and I feel like Hero Marine's been doing that for a while. So I definitely have to catch that one. All right, so let's do like a slight pivot to the top 8 that are going to BlizzCon, because like I mentioned, you know, we had 7 of those top 8 in this top 8. All the top 8 went to GSL versus the World, which I think it's really funny how that turns out, right? A Laser got a bunch of crap, but it's like, no, he's really good still. So I want to take a look at the 8 players that are going to BlizzCon from the WCS circuit. Let me read them off real quick. It is going to be Cyril, Hero Marine, Time, Neeb, Raynor, a Laser, Special, and Showtime. So that's 2 Protoss, that is 3 Zerg, and that is 3 Terran players. So kind of want to know from you guys, is this the absolute strongest lineup for the Foreigners? Is there anyone missing that could be there instead of someone else? You don't necessarily need to name who needs to not be there, but just wondering about the overall strength of this lineup in your guys' opinion.
If I could say something about a Laser, he really tends to be a person who rises to occasions that are more difficult, where I think oftentimes you face someone who's stacked against you that is supposed to win and you get kind of intimidated and it's hard to overcome that, where it seems like oftentimes when he faces a stronger player, he just really shows up and surprises everybody. So it's cool to see him take on Titans like that. And then Lambo is the person who I would probably give a mention to, who didn't make it, but is like super, super good. Just kind of seemed like the results didn't quite line up, but he is one of the best Zerg players in the world at articulating the highest level of Zerg play. So if people want a really good Zerg stream to learn from, where he can explain what Cyril is doing and he talks with Cyril and things like this, that's a really rich place to learn about StarCraft.
Cool.
For me, just looking at it, I don't know. I feel like it looks like, because I feel like each year that goes by, there's ups and downs for lots of players, and that lineup to me, it seems pretty solid. I've seen insanely solid games from all of those players, so I think they're all capable. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
What you, TLO?
Well, the ranking kind of tells the story. The only player who I think might be better than a top 8 right now is, I would guess Strogo might have higher chances at doing well at BlizzCon than Showtime. And that's not necessarily because Showtime is worse, but I feel Drogo has higher highs than Showtime, and Showtime sometimes seems to hit a little bit of a wall. And Strogo lately has been very strong, I think. So, fair. I think it's fair to say, like, Showtime is rank 8, Drogo is rank 9. So I don't think I'm leaving myself too far out of the window here. But other than that, I really don't think anybody in the top 8 shouldn't be in the top 8. I can't think of a single player that should be in the top 8 other than those guys.
When I think about top foreigners, it's like this list plus Scarlet and Lambo are generally, those are like my go-to of like, these are the best, the absolute best. But definitely, like Drogo's been picking up a lot lately. But yeah, it feels like you can't really ask for anything much better than this lineup. We don't have the full Korean lineup yet. We still got to finish out this GSL to see how Rogue does, and then do Super Tournament to get the rest of the spots. But just in general, we know the basic names that are likely to make it from the Korean side. How do you think this lineup fares for actual BlizzCon? Like, is this clearly Cyril's going to be the guy that goes all the way? Are there multiple players that you think can make it very far? I mean, we saw what happened at GSL versus the World. What do you think about the upcoming BlizzCon with this lineup specifically?
Well, I think Cyril is definitely, again, a contender for, just taking it all. We've had those ridiculous voices sometime this year where people were saying Cyril is not that good anymore. He's washed up. I've had people in my chat asking me if I think Cyril is going to retire soon. I think him, and then I think at best I'd see one other player from the WCS crowd to make it. If you're really lucky, at another top 4, but I think I see a lot of quarterfinal eliminations.
I'm excited to see maybe Cyril versus Dark. I think that would be really sick. Dark has seemed like he really clicked into a monster tier, where he's always been like top 3 Zerg for Korea, but with his recent results, it just seems like he is ahead of everyone. So I really like that.
Yeah, I'd much rather see that actually than the overhyped Cyril versus Maru matchup.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm a true believer in Cyril, man. I'm looking at everyone in the Korean lineup, and although I feel like this bracket could go crazy all over the place for many different matchups that could happen, I would honestly give the edge to Cyril. Like, for the person who's going to win the tournament, I would give the edge to Cyril. But it could go a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I definitely look at this, and I feel like Cyril is favored going into BlizzCon right now. But I mean, it was just last night and at a terrible time for you guys. Did anyone catch Maru playing last night?
I did not.
I haven't yet, no.
You have to watch it, because it was the best Maru play that it was like, we're gearing up maybe this year. Come on, Maru versus Cyril, come on.
The hype train's back.
Yeah. Just to quickly talk about GSL Codes, because we're in the top 4 now. We had Dark beat TY 3-2. We had Rogue beat Zest 3-2. We had Trap beat Keen 3-0. And Maru beat Ragnarok 3-1. That Maru Ragnarok series, oh my god, because Ragnarok is playing some good StarCraft right now. He looks fantastic. And so I don't know. I feel like maybe he's coming alive for the end of the year, which makes me excited about that. I really don't. We deserve it. Don't we deserve this as passionate StarCraft fans to see Maru at his peak play against Cyril at his peak play in the BlizzCon finals game 7?
It would be good. I think TVZ, honestly, I really like the top tier Terran versus top tier Zerg. I think is probably the most exciting matchup to watch as well, just because the matchup is so active all the time. I think it'd be really good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well established as the people's favorite matchup. Even if for Protoss players, it's the best.
Yeah. No, I'm a Protoss player. I like that matchup.
It's interesting how Blizzard managed to hit the perfect spot, because I feel like no matter what's going on in CBT, because you have the creep versus trying to deny creep mechanic, the matchup is just always good, because you always have an objective that both players that is controversial, and you don't only have bases, you need to fight over the map. And I feel like that's sometimes missing a little bit in the other matchups. And maybe sometimes a little bit better in Brood War, because you have more important choke points in Brood War. And in StarCraft 2, Protoss cares about creep, but it's just a function of the army moving out a lot of times that just kills all the creep in the way anyway because of observers. That it doesn't come to play as much as in CDT, where Terran has scan, they actually need to invest killing the creep, and then Zerg is trying to deny that, and Terran is actually way stronger off creep. Well, not way stronger necessarily, but you know what I mean. And it's actually amazing. And the only gripe I have with CVT is that I think we have a lot of mech Terran versus Zerg at the moment, and again, creep is not as big as a factor in that matchup as against Bio. So I feel like we're actually missing out a little bit on the best CVT we could see, and mech is being pushed more and more. And I'm not saying like mech is too strong or anything, but I think the Bio should be the most played just composition in CVT, because I think it's the most interesting.
Well, I'm actually even more excited for you to watch the Maru match now.
Okay.
That your sentiments. I think you'll especially like that match.
Cool.
Well, with that, let's transition into this kind of final topic here about the current state of balance. And because here's the thing, right? Now you're all Zerg players, this is something I'm very happy about to have you all, because right now I'm feeling it. I'm sure you are too. There's whisperings, there's murmurings that maybe it's not Protoss that's too strong right now. Maybe it's Zerg.
Zerg is super broken. It's way overpowered.
Maybe. I don't know. I want to get your guys' take on this. Like, what are you thinking about the way the game is right now? Obviously, we just had a patch. It did mix things up a little bit, but Zerg's doing all right. What do you guys? How do you look at this?
Well, here's the problem. If you get a best player in the world and they play one race in StarCraft and they keep winning, is that because it's overpowered, or are they the best player? How long can they be the best player until it's demonstrated that it's overpowered?
Yeah, this is an interesting...
Because you get the Cyril Rayner finals, which some people are saying that they're the two best players in the circuit. Is that the case, or is Zerg broken?
It can be both at the same time as well.
Yeah, it's true.
It is absolutely a possibility that it's both of those.
So I think it's always interesting to look at stats, and I know that those stats don't necessarily mean too much, but I think it's good to have a baseline. What's interesting, so on Illegal Luck, it's saying PBT right now 50%. Perfectly balanced. Terran versus Zerg, 49.85 from the perspective of Terran, so 0.15% in favor of Zerg. And then PVC, Protoss winning only 48% of the matches. We've definitely had numbers looking way crazier. So I think overall, just looking at that, that's looking pretty good. But you can always argue, okay, that doesn't really matter for the top 16 best players in tournaments, because this is including all kinds of online cups and all kinds of results that aren't really that relevant. But I think balance right now is pretty good. I don't think anything is super broken, but I think there are certain aspects of it that isn't fun. I think that's a bigger issue that we have than necessarily Serral winning all the tournaments doesn't necessarily tell us that Zerg is too strong, I think. As Special is whining about in chat, but I think that's, it's not constructive.
Special in the chat.
Looks like we found the non-Zerg in the discussion.
Yeah.
As a fun note for the audience and myself and other people who are not at the top professional level, we don't use the StarCraft units to their maximum capacity, so balance doesn't really affect us in the same way. Usually it's our supply blocks and our mismanagement of our units and not having a good economy size and taking terrible fights. So there's this discussion, which is a legitimate discussion, but at the same time, many people really dive into that discussion to basically excuse their own losses and things like this. And that if Blizzard would just get the right patch, then I would move up about 2.5 leagues, because that's what's holding me back right now. No, it's actually you. Yeah. It's actually you that's holding yourself back.
So the really tricky part is if you're basing balance on just like having a conversation with Special in chat there. Who's bringing up, it's Serral, it's Sue, it's Dark. The problem is if you're looking at the highest tier of play and the results, that the sample size is actually so ridiculously small that you can almost make no statement about that, right? Because it's very counterintuitive. But for example, if you flip a coin and you do it 100 times, there's many series, like most of the time, even for 100 flips, you're going to see sometimes the coin landing like 9 times in a row on one side. It's not like a very equal, like win, win, loss, loss, win, loss kind of. It doesn't look like that. So, easily an entire year of WCS or GSL could be won by a Zerg, even if you just flip a coin in every single final. And that wouldn't tell us it's imbalanced, because the sample is so small.
Yeah, I think with balance too, I think the only way, like even if you have like, let's say like 4 of the top 8 players are all Zerg, or it's like really, it's a bit Zerg heavy on the top. I feel like one of the only ways you can justify a balance is when you have those Zergs repeating the same builds as each other. It's like a build is like repeatedly always like, okay, he's doing this build, it's gonna win. He's just doing it. It's so hard to stop. But if you have like different playstyles from all these different players, I don't know, it gets kind of like this gray area where what do you actually do to change that? And what's going to be like the nerf you're looking for that's going to like fix everything? Because you might actually just break something else. So it's kind of hard to figure that out. But yeah, if you don't, I feel like just the repetitive styles is the big key to seeing something that is actually broken.
Yeah, I think definitely what Nero said is very true. Like when we're talking about balance, I like to talk about balance at the very, very top. And the sample size is close. And people are like, oh, what about like GM? Let's talk about all through GM. No. GM players and pro players are completely different. And low-level pro players and top-level pro players are completely different. And that's all skill-based stuff that can be closed by yourself rather than Blizzard patching. When looking on like the actual balance, like how to look at balance, how to figure out if something's in balance, because there are so many gray areas and it's so difficult to figure out like, okay, what's actually going on here? But I feel like there's 2 things you should really be looking at. One is the very opening of the game, because we can dice that down so quick, right? We can be like, is this 2 barracks unstoppable? It's not. Okay. It's not in balance. It's not happening in every game. It's not unstoppable, because the very early part of the game, you can very quickly go through all the possibilities of what can be done. It's like, yeah, this all happens before 20 drones, right? So what are the variations? Okay, we look at that. Okay, that's not in balance. And then the other part would be looking at extreme late game. Let's just pretend that the game went super long. Both players have full upgrades and any units they want. Like, what's the ultimate composition? And then you can work backwards from that and say, okay, Broodlord, Infestor, a few Vipers, Corruptors, Spore Queen. Is this, what can beat this? Oh, nothing can beat this? Okay, let's take a step back. Can you actually get to this, right? And I feel like that's how I like to kind of look at it and try to decide if something is broken. How often can we actually get to this composition? Is it actually unbeatable? Are there counters to it? Do we have more play? Are there steps beforehand that can force the game into a different direction, right? Like, are there good enough timing pushes to stop it or slow it down? Or if you get into it, you're behind on bases because that's the only way that it's going to happen against a top-tier opponent. But, yeah.
As a counterpoint, though, you gave a very detailed and nuanced and broad-based approach to thinking about balance. I think shit posting on the subreddit has a lot of value just for some camaraderie and like shared spirit of venting about the game. Like that's a healthy part of it too. So we're not saying that you shouldn't make some meme posts about Zerg being broken or Terran and Protoss being broken, because it's all kind of part of the culture here. So enjoy those things. We can talk about balance too.
Our chat channels aren't good enough, so you got to do your shit posting on Reddit. It's very important. Jump on those Twitter bandwagons, all right?
I think
Get behind Special. He'll lead the path. There you go.
I think it's very important what you said, Dan, is that we need to, unfortunately, we need to look at it qualitatively. Like we cannot just, look at results unless they are incredibly lopsided, and I think what I see is that Zerg late game, yes, is very strong, but I feel like Terran has a lot of tools to prevent Zerg from getting to that stage. I think the frustration that a lot of Terrans have is that if the early game doesn't go well for Terran, it becomes maybe too difficult to win the late game. And, then it starts feeling imbalanced because the game wasn't lost at minute 20 when it looks like just very one-sided and looks like Terran can't do anything. Actually, the game was maybe lost at minute 6. And Terran can survive, but Zerg becomes stronger and stronger. And I do agree that potentially the ultra late game is too strong for Zerg. And because of that, Zerg, knowing that, can adopt a playstyle that, as long as they get there in a reasonable state, they'll win games. But at the same time, I feel like after the Ghost EMP buff, I haven't seen enough Terrans fully abuse that yet. Because it is really large. And
it is large.
I don't see enough maybe Medivac Ghost, sneaky plays or like really sending single ghosts around just trying to EMP stuff. I mean, again, I haven't seen Marvel's Ragnarok, so maybe I'm like,
you're gonna love it. The more you talk about what you think, the more I'm like, yep, you gotta watch this series.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
Do we have any, just a quick aside, do we have any favorite new maps to play on?
I feel like this map pool is actually a little bit meh. I think last map pool was pretty good. This map pool feels like it doesn't really know fully what it is. We have a lot of large maps, which again is probably helping Zerg a little bit against Terran. And I feel just most of those maps they're just not as enjoyable as last map pool. I feel like they're kind of bland.
So far, I've enjoyed games that we've had on Triton a little bit, and I'm intrigued by the air slow blockers on Winter's Gate. Those have been kind of interesting, watching the way that those have impacted drops and stuff.
Yeah, I love those. I don't like the other slowers. I feel
the ones in the middle I'm kind of over, but the air ones, I'm like, oh, this is neat. And I like, there's a little path, so if you want to get your medevacs through there and you micro it correctly, you can do it. But it's kind of I find those two maps so far to be somewhat interesting.
So as we're adding in these different features that shift the way that units move on the map, has anyone played Doom 2016? They have these speed jump ramps that they boost your character and then throw them into the air.
Oh, like jump pads, like in Quake as well, right?
Yes, having these in StarCraft, I think would be hilarious. Imagine just shooting queens off of those or tanks.
Think about banelings, dude. Just launch a bunch of banelings off of it.
That's what we need. Instead of slowing units down, we need stuff that just speeds them up and shoots them.
Imagine that.
StarCraft 2 is not fast enough yet.
That's a good point. I never thought of it like that. Oh my god, can you imagine that? The boosted medevac gets to your base so quickly.
What if there would just be a button that you can press on the map of a unit and it just speeds up the game 2 times or 4 times?
Yeah. Well, any closing thoughts on the current state of the balance of Zerg? Is this a wait and see thing? You mentioned, Ari, you think the late game is very strong. Are we looking at possible Zerg nerfs after BlizzCon? What do you think?
I can start. I think the EMP change, like you guys saying, it's not utilized enough, and that's such a massive change to Zerg late game, because I think Zerg late game is super Like we're talking about like the ultimate cost-efficient death ball. It's so infestor bias, and if you can shut that down, I like. Obviously, I know I'm not like a top-level player anymore myself, but I've gone through plenty of experiences where I feel like I have complete control, and then one mistake with the infestors, and I'm like, well, I no longer have control. This is all falling apart now. So I'd love to see more experimenting with Ghost before major nerfs come.
Okay.
What I'd love to see is nerf Broodlord Infestor in some way that is like not insane and allow Zerg to win late game in other ways. I think almost no Zerg actually enjoys playing our best composition. It's very boring. It doesn't feel like, you know, the way Zerg is meant to play, and it feels the longer the game goes, the slower you have to become a Zerg in order to make an army that can compete. Because, you know, realistically, any army that is not Broodlord Infestor just hilariously fails against, you know, a late game Protoss or late game Terran army. So all Zerg has is Broodlord Infestor. So if we nerf that too much without buffing, you know, make Ultralisk viable or something like that, you know, where Zerg can maybe play a playstyle where our main army is not as strong, but good enough that we can, you know, multitask and do something with the map rather than having this, yeah, I'm sitting on this blob, you can't defeat that. And, you know, now I'm trying to take one base at a time, and my ideal scenario is half the map being mined out.
Do like the idea of shifting the balance of Ultras being a little bit more viable in more situations and shifting away from Broodlords. It is a faster unit, and I think it's very fun to watch and to use. The Broodlord tends to be a slow, lumbering critical mass. It's fun to use, but I don't think it's quite as like snappy and high impact as doing Ultra stuff. But it feels like you can't really make Ultras in that many situations. It's just not.
Yeah. I think in general, the more we can move away from mass air units in general, then the better. Mass air units and mass spellcasters, because it does lead for, you know, even Broodlord Infestor is, you know, it's at its best when not attacking, but when defending. And the same goes kind of for like Liberator armies or, you know, Mothership, Templar, Carrier, Tempest armies. They're, you know, you have no incentive almost of them to attack other than one race might be better at late game than the other, but it creates this very, very slow paced late game where, you know, you can't split up your army too much, because if you do that, you know, you have two slow armies, so that doesn't really work. And the more we allow people to still express themselves on the map, I think the better.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you just said reminded me of the Solar Rogue Maru type of group situation with the just sitting back forever. Solar's not mining for like 7 or 8 minutes. It's like, no problem. No, I have a lot of infestors. It's cool. I feel like, you know, this whole talk about the Zerg thing, I feel like the infestor is really the root of everything.
Yeah.
The infestor, the combination of fungal and
I think it's
parasitic
just,
bomb is just like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
I think the infestor is just the most versatile spellcaster in the entire game. Like it's never bad in any situation.
Yeah.
So
it's like you can snipe a High Templar and he'll throw its storm out on you. You can't even snipe the fucking infestor. He's like, oh, you can't catch me now.
Yeah.
It's like it's. I could stand to see that unit changed.
Yeah, it should definitely change. The issue is that the infestor fills so many gaps Zerg has. You know, Zerg doesn't have any good anti-air other than the infestor, pretty much. You know, of course, yeah, Corruptors are okay, but then, you know, you're not going to win an air battle against any army just with Corruptors.
Well, good talk about the Zerg. Thank you for those final thoughts. I think from here we'll go ahead and get into those Patreon questions. Again, if you'd like to leave a question for us, check out thepylonshow.com if you are a Patreon supporter, or patreon.com/The Pylon Show. All right, let's jump into it. Sate0 asks, one of the biggest points I keep hearing about how hard it is to get into Brood War is how much you have to lose before a new player would even find matches. Why not just let people pick a starting MMR for placements? Example, I never played before, starts you at 800. I know what I'm doing, starts 1500, etc. This makes me think of all the drama we've had in the StarCraft 2 scene with streamers tanking accounts and then crushing people. don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, especially you, Vibe.
I feel like I don't know. I'm pretty like specific with my answer on this. Like, if you have the intention of like tanking an account and just like literally doing it for like the lulz, like, hey, look at this, I'm gonna crush it. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just like bragging about it. I feel like it's a massive negative. Like, it's obviously not gonna make it. It's just like you're trying to show off, and it's, you know, deep down that you're not supposed to be there. It's incredibly lame for both players. I don't know. It's super negative. But my specific thing that I try to justify what I'm doing, which is, I'm assuming you're talking about the whole bronze GM thing. It's just basically like, I know there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and be like, it's just a bunch of malarkey, basically. I don't believe anything he's saying. But what I'm trying to do is I'm literally making like a guide where it's like, I'm not actually like, okay, guys, so I'm GM and this is how you got to play to beat this game. Like, it's literally just like doing bare minimum, but it's teaching people efficiency. Like, okay, so you do a lot of wrong things, like watching your Zergling run around the map for 30 seconds straight, just looking at everything, it's going to be terrible. But if you actually, you know, focus on like 3 simple tasks at like lower level, and you just do these repeatedly, and they just never mess them up, your skill is going to automatically raise. So letting people, I don't know, I feel like the original question, if I'm remembering this right, is letting people start where they want to start in MMR. That's personally, I don't have a problem with that at all. That's totally fine. I think if you want to start at 1500 and you end up realizing it's an overestimate for yourself and you start losing a lot, that's your own decision. But I feel like there's no way you're ever going to stop people from making accounts. It's just not going to happen. There's always going to be someone who wants to do it. So I don't know. It's one of these things where I can see it from both perspectives. There's the perspective of the guy who feels like he's getting steamrolled by people who don't belong there. And there's also, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, like, without stepping on everyone's toes. But yeah, I don't know. My opinion on it is learning educational purposes for me is totally fine. But
yeah, no, I was being a jerk face with that. It totally, what you do is a very educational journey. Supposedly there are people that just do this for shits and giggles. And
I did a bronze GM at some point as well, so I think that it does have a lot of value. The people who are looking for StarCraft content have said that that's some of the best, and people who look for Terran and Protoss, I refer them to Vibe's bronze GM because it is very good content, and you can explain a lot of the super basic building blocks of the game in that environment. And it's specifically, there's one account that's for the bronze GM project. When it's done, the account is done and you're back to your main thing. So it's not like a usual thing where we're smurfing Thursdays or we're just going to beat up on platinum players. It's not really a regular thing. It's more specifically to create educational content that illustrates what's happening in those tiers of play. Because one of the big problems that I had as a content creator is a viewer will ask me, hey, I'm in gold and I'm getting destroyed by marine tank. Like, what units do I build? I don't actually see gold games. Like, that's not a place where I operate on the ladder. So I have to either see their replay that they send me or like go in there and see what the landscape is like, because it's not quite as cheesy as you think. Some people will equate a cheese or an all-in to someone who attacked you at some point, like before or after 5 minutes. It can be anything. So it's more about understanding how an economy works, what a good economy size is in StarCraft. And there was a study back in Wings of Liberty that tried to find out what the main difference was between leagues of player in StarCraft 2. And the main thing is worker count over time. Better players consistently have a larger economy as the game progresses, because that increases their production over time, the options that they have, and the flexibility of their game plan.
Cool. Any thoughts on choosing MMR to start on the ladder, TLO?
I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I actually don't really see a downside. You know, of course, you know, you will always have some creepers, but they will creep anyway. So I would doubt that would create more people that, you know, beat up on noobs than if you didn't have that option. In an ideal world, you would have some kind of placement matches that, and I know some games do that. I think Dota does that. Is it analyzes your gameplay, and based on some metrics, it'll place you. You know, obviously it would never place you super high, but you know, you get a little bit of an idea, like APM and maybe money spent and stuff like that, and you could get a few factors to give people 200 or less or 200 more MMR, and I think that's a good thing. Especially the smaller games that have been played very hardcore for a very long time suffer from just having this impossible entry level. Quake is very similar in that nobody can pick up Quake nowadays, at least Quake Duo, because even I used to be a pretty solid Quake player, but if I go online and try to play a one-on-one, I'm not gonna get a single frag in 100 matches. And like, how do you get more players to play Brood War or Quake if they just lose like their first 50 games and not just lose, but absolutely hopelessly lose them. So I think being able to place people lower would be good. You could also consider, but they might stray away from that. I think streaks at the beginning should maybe be awarded more minus MMR or more plus MMR. I know in StarCraft 2 at the beginning you have pretty high uncertainty. So if you win a game with a fresh account, you gain like 200 MMR for each win.
Yeah.
But also if you lose 100 MMR. So I think maybe having that in Brood War would be helpful.
There is a little bit of the streak with it, but I think a lot of the people who've been trying Brood War, they do find it's like a ridiculous amount of losses in a row before you hit anyone near your level. It's pretty tough on that ladder. All right, thank you for the question, Saint Zero. And Nescu asks, really enjoyed the Brood War episode last week. I watched a Brood War. This is funny that we're hitting all these Brood War questions because there was a Brood War episode last week. It's like, this is backwards from what it should have been. A bunch of StarCraft 2 questions last week for my Brood War guests. Really enjoyed the Brood War episode last week. I watch Brood War occasionally, but I only play SC2. And one thing which puts me off playing Brood War is that I'm Masters in SC2 as Zerg, and I don't want to start near the bottom again. How many of my skills and mechanics from StarCraft 2 do you think would transfer over to Brood War? What do you guys think?
I would say a good amount. If you're Masters in StarCraft 2, I think initially there will be the shock of being Brood War being just so incredibly clunky, but mechanics will transfer. In the end, you're pointing a cursor, pressing some buttons on your keyboard. Nobody can take that away from you. You're gonna be, if you're Masters in StarCraft 2, you're good at any game in the world.
Yeah, I would expand on that for the musical instrument aspect. You're talking about the keyboard and mouse. They're basically our weapons as competitive gamers. And for someone to develop their skill with their keyboard hand and with their mouse hand, that translates into a lot of different games. Yes, there is the adjustment period of understanding how projectiles work in shooting games, understanding how to micro the different Brood War units as opposed to the StarCraft units based on the AI. But your overall gamer skill is very much linked to how your mastery is over your keyboard and your mouse.
Yeah, for me, it was, there's like a lot of, it's like not the exact same task, but it's just, like if you play StarCraft 2, it teaches you repetitive task upkeep. And there are different tasks to do in both, like for me, it's Zerg. And you go from like spreading creep to like going back into Brood War now, like you're actually making drones mine minerals every time you build them, stuff like this. Like you just got to do like tasks where you always keep repetitively doing something. You just figure out what those are, and then you become way better at it right away.
I have to give a disclaimer because people are upset about what I said, that it's going to be very difficult. I have to point out I played Protoss in Brood War, and that's a very easy race in Brood War. And I think that's much easier than for Terran or Zerg, which I think is insane. Like I always thought Zerg and Terran and Brood War is just incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to TLO. He's a fucking genius. That's the smartest thing anyone's ever said on the Pylon show.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. Like you have these skills with the mouse and keyboard. Those are going to come over. I love what you said, Vibe, about the repetitive tasks, like figuring out like, okay, you get into this rhythm and this is how you macro. So you kind of are memorizing, here are the keystrokes and mouse movements that you're generally going to do to macro during this part of the game. Also, StarCraft 1 and 2, no matter which one you play, you'll be good at the other one, because if you get good at one, you're kind of, it's more than just being good at a video game. You're kind of just good at learning and getting good at things. Yeah. And that's something that transfers to everything. Like anyone who gets really good at StarCraft 1 or 2 is just like a successful human, basically.
I would build off that and say that StarCraft is one of the frontiers where you can demonstrate to yourself as an individual that you can take on a difficult task, improve, and develop yourself and your skill set. So if you've demonstrated in StarCraft, I've reached Diamond League. It's one of the hardest games that's ever been devised. You reached one of the higher leagues. Now you know that if you set yourself to a task, you can do stuff. And I think for a lot of people, they do tend to struggle finding that sense of belief in yourself. And the ladder is one of those places where it is you against the world. And if you have earned that spot, that's with you for the rest of your life.
That's very true. Thank you for the question, Inescu. Great answers, guys. Some Drunk Canadian asks, I really love the last two shows, Maps and Brood War, and that got me thinking, how would SC2 change in the early game if the mini-map had the Brood War Fog of War, like black map with no features? Sending much love from the north. Tara in control. Long live the Pylon Show. Thank you. Some Drunk Canadian. So if basically the Brood War mini-map starts completely black,
yeah.
Do you guys think that this would have a big impact on StarCraft 2 if we just started with the black minimap?
I don't think it would matter until like like only the lowest tiers of players would be affected by that, basically, and that would just punish people that are already struggling with the game. So I don't really see the point.
Yeah, I feel like if you're playing a lot, you would have like a little bit of a longer learning process of being like, oh yeah, this is how the map layout is, because like, but once you play like, let's say 15-20 games on it, you'll kind of memorize it anyways. Yeah. I agree with TLO. People who play a lot more casually would just struggle way harder with it.
Yeah, I can't remember a single moment in Brood War where I'm, after being a pretty good player, where I made a mistake because the map was black. You just know where you have to send your scout and stuff.
With StarCraft 2, they made that recent change that took the opposite approach, which was they have a little indicator of where your opponent's spawn position is. I don't know if Brood War has that, but that makes it easier on new players of like just orienting where am I, where is my opponent, and kind of what is the landscape. Because I feel like that isn't really one of the biggest skills that is impressive, is like knowing the layout of the map. You can figure out the layout of the map, being able to exploit the map in an intelligent way, which is
actually adding to this, making a statement for StarCraft 2, I actually prefer the increase the contrast of scouted area versus never scouted area, because I think it's a little light on the minimap. So I actually think I'd prefer if I had black versus what I've like black and what I've seen so far, rather than what we have right now, because I think the contrast on the minimap is not strong enough in StarCraft 2.
I think that, yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting point. I would say, just as someone who plays a lot of Brood War, that the way StarCraft 2 does the minimap is a little bit better, because occasionally, some of these bases you're trying to scout or something are really funny shaped, and if you, especially with Brood War pathing, you like, if you right click your STV and it hits like the edge of something instead of the land, it'll just go somewhere and nowhere near where you want it to go. And you look back, like, oh my God, like, why aren't you anywhere near where I want you? So I think it would only frustrate younger players, like newer players in StarCraft 2. But yeah, I could see it being almost useful for a pro player where the pathing is good and you already know the map all the way. So you can look at that and be like, oh, I think I know where your proxy is there. Like
CG is actually making a really good point. It would affect mineral walking in StarCraft 2, because in Brood War,
that's true.
That's actually pretty big.
Right? But you
couldn't mineral walk because it's black.
Yeah, that is a pretty big deal, the mineral walk thing.
That would actually change balance of rushes so much too.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, an interesting thing. I just didn't even think of that at all, but that's true. It would be black, because in Brood War, when you scroll on the main map, it's all black until you've seen it. Huh.
Yeah, you could actually block cannon rushes and stuff like that on the ramp.
Yeah, damn. All right. Well, that's thank you for the question, Some Drunk Canadian. It was actually more thought-invoking than I thought it would be. Paragleber asks, how do you feel about hosting a King of Blizzard RTS tournament once Warcraft 3 Reforged is out, where each match is a best of 9 with 3 maps of Brood War, 3 maps of Warcraft 3, and 3 maps of StarCraft 2? I think it could be a fun off-season event. Which Koreans and which non-Koreans would have the best chances to win here?
I think it'd be fun. I would actually watch that. I think it'd be entertaining.
That it would be entertaining. I'm trying to, like, my brain is going through it. And I'm like, okay, there would be some really funny ones, because it would be like, for instance, no one would beat Todd at Warcraft 3, right? But then any pro that's playing StarCraft 2, no one would beat them that. And then it's like, Yeah, it feels like the decider would always be on the game that neither player plays, right? Like maybe I would beat someone at StarCraft 1, they beat me at StarCraft 2, and then we play Warcraft 3 and don't know what the fuck we're doing. So it'd be like, that's
Are we moving toward a gamer decathlon kind of event? Because that sounds awesome.
It would definitely be interesting because you'd see like the real skill of the players. Like you could play Nero's StarCraft 2 and then like Artosis's StarCraft 1, and then you play, you know, at the end, these guys don't know how to play Warcraft 3. Whoa! It's like just idiocy going at each other or something. It would be really.
Lambo and I actually participated at an event like that at Dreamhack Leipzig, and we had a team of 5 people, and we were going up against like a bunch of streamers. And I think we played 10 different games, and Warcraft 3 was one of them. And I remember, Soccer was on our team too. And I remember we both like played this super specialized like 2v2 Warcraft 3 build of like 2 Ancients of War, Mass Huntress, no hero build. And then we arrived at their base, and they didn't even have like a hero. And we were like so worried that they're going to lose the game. But we got our butts kicked because they're streamers, so they had like a very wider range of like, you know, playing FIFA and Rocket League and games like that. But it was a pretty fun event to play in. And I think if you would have like a team of like several people that, you know, they don't need to play everything, I think that could be interesting as an event.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of a cool idea. Thank you for the question, Paraglider. Benjamin asks, I know Jeff is irreplaceable, but are there any plans for bringing on another host to the Pylon show? No, not really. Just kind of inviting a bunch of guests on. It's really fun. Ryan Yu asks, question for Artosis. Has Blizzard ever asked you about your personal opinion in game balance of SC2, and has it ever affected any patches that they made to the game? Also, do they run the balance changes by the pros and casters before they announce it to the community? So, I mean, I've talked to them about balance before. They don't, nowadays, they talk to the pros. I don't really bother to give my input so much. I guess if they watch GSL, they can hear what I'm thinking at that given moment. But I think it's better coming from the pros that are playing very regularly. How much does Blizzard talk to the pros, Daria?
Pretty good amounts. For example, at Dreamhack Montreal, they met with a team, you know, some Protoss players, some Terran players, some Zerg players. We all had our own session, and they give us like, you know, they talk about potential upcoming balance changes or what we think right now, and communication is pretty solid these days. You know, a couple of years ago, absolutely nothing, unless you had David Kim's Facebook or Skype account and happened to be one of the privileged people that could message him. And but nowadays there's a pretty like official basically way for Blizzard to reach out to players, and it's good.
There is a reminder too that many people on the StarCraft team, maybe all of them, are people who love StarCraft and are fans of it. So they'll be watching StarCraft streams. So if a streamer is talking about a matchup and stuff, they hear that. If we say it on the Pylon show, they hear that. So they're here, they're listening. Just because they don't necessarily direct message everyone doesn't mean that they're not taking in that information.
That is a kind of funny thing to think about, that people may not realize that everyone that works on StarCraft really likes StarCraft. Imagine that being the job you're miserable in. Like, a lot of people are miserable in office jobs, so imagine you're working on StarCraft, you're miserable in that. You know how many people would give their left leg to just have that position, you know?
Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, that's a nice thing about StarCraft, that you pretty much know everybody that's doing it is doing it because they love StarCraft, because a new up-and-coming person that, you know, only is in there for the career in esport, they're not going to choose StarCraft to be the path.
Yeah. That's true. And what a fool they are to not. It's the greatest of the esports. Amen. Thank you for the question. Nahyan asks, what is your pet peeve? Something minor to anyone else, but Russell's your Jimmy's personally.
I'll start, I guess. For me, because I'm streaming all the time, I can't help the fact that I have a massive ego. It's backseat gaming. I can't stand it. Every time I read it when I'm streaming, it always depending on, like, if I'm already like a little tilted, it'll just kind of like tilt me way harder.
All right. I think that's a pretty normal one.
Yeah.
I think
Nero, do you have one?
Yeah, one of the easiest ways to piss me off is to talk shit about my friends or people I care about.
So if you're talking shit about my mods or my VIPs or other streamers, that really like gets me going super fast.
Okay.
Unacceptable.
Well, that's two things, I guess. In general, inconsiderate behavior. It just makes me incredibly angry because I think there's pretty much never a reason to be inconsiderate and just be mean or, you know, make somebody feel bad for no reason. And also, wait, what was the second one? No, I forgot it. Oh, I guess, yeah, it's just a combination of, you know, high levels of confidence and high levels of ignorance. And those are the most obnoxious people on the planet, and it's very difficult to deal with that. So best just, you know, ban those kind of people and get them out of your life.
Okay. I hate offensive GGs with a passion. I hate unpausers with a passion.
Ooh, what about the pause BM where you pause on pause and pause like that? That one's fun.
I can live with the pause BM a little bit more, or the pause and type in has left the game or something like that. It's like, oh, that's fine. But if I have to pause because my baby threw up on itself and I need 1 minute literally in a 20-minute macro game and you unpause, you're garbage.
The funniest thing is when people play a game like StarCraft or Dota or whatever that has an extremely flexible amount of time it could take, right? It could be anything from 5 minutes to an hour. And you pause the game and people tell you, I don't have time. You're literally playing a game that has, you know, it could, and me pausing 2 minutes, that's going to be what makes you run out of time. That's absolutely ridiculous.
If you don't have time, that's like the number one reason not to unpause, because you've just wasted that entire game. Because like if your entire goal is ladder points, well, you're wasting your whole life already. Like that's not the fucking point, man. The point is to improve and have fun and learn. So I mean, the unpausing to get ladder points is just stupid. You're stupid. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, like how much?
Otherwise, you wasted 11 minutes because you're not getting the game to the finish. You're not finishing the game. You're just cheating.
Yeah, and how much are you going to raise your average MMR by winning all the games that somebody paused? Not at all, basically.
Yeah, no, your average MMR won't go up. In fact, you're missing out on this whole next stage of the game that you're not practicing because, you know, you've gotten yourself into this position. Let's see where it goes from there. Now let's unpause and just get a free win. Yeah. Oh my God, what a terrible life choice. So yeah, that's my pet peeve. All right, thank you for the question, Nahyan. Romp asks, thoughts on what major changes could be fun to adapt post BlizzCon patch? Example, Protoss remove the mothership core and replace with carriers hull being permanently cloaked. Dark Archon with Time Warp and Maelstrom. Add upgrade, reduce Nexus recall cooldown. Remove charge autocast to force more micro of ability. So those are some of his ideas. But what do you guys think about some major changes that could occur after BlizzCon? Because some years we have super major changes. This last year didn't feel as major, but you know. Nero.
You know how you can have archers ride hippogriffs in Warcraft 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
Queens upgraded to ride ultralisks into battle.
That sounds so broken. Dark is never going to lose another tournament.
They said big changes in the question.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, that's mine.
All right, I got another ultra change as well. It's a way to make them more useful and more late game potential. It would be if Ultralisk had an ability, kind of like what they had before with charge, but instead of charging towards units, you charge into a wall or like a cliff, and it becomes an artificial ramp that Zerg has, and you can just run lings in their base and everything. Just units all around the base.
That's great. It's like zombie bodies at the bottom of a wall or something.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Any ideas there, TLO?
I actually made a TL blog post about this a couple years ago, and I'm still a big proponent of that. I call it the 2/3 Ultralisk, and I want to cut HP 2/3. I want to cut damage 2/3, reduce armor a little bit, maybe by 1 point.
2/3 or by 2/3?
By two basically 2/3, like make it 66%. And then supply, so it's only 4 supply. But also, and that's the most important thing, make it smaller by the same amount.
Yeah.
So it's not so clunky. You can actually play like Ling Ultra styles with like Ultras doing proper run bys
That would be
rather than
cool.
getting stuck and everything. So.
Do you think they have to change the name from Ultralisk to like Pretty Bigalisk?
To Malice.
Oh, that's amazing. I like that idea. That's cool. All right. So the Zerg players want the Ultras to be changed, whether something's riding them. Of course, if they become 2/3, if it's a Pretty Bigalisk, the Queen can't ride it. Maybe the Roach. I don't know. All right. Thank you for the question, Romp. Juicy Ernston asks, what, in your opinion, has been the main factor in causing Zergs to play so passive in ZVT? Mega fan of Bly, Bjol, and Leenock of old, but the TVZ match has gotten fairly stale, and saying that hurts me a lot. Love the show. Keep it up. So why do you think ZVT has become a bit more passive lately?
Well, it's just because there's nothing that can compete the main composition of Terran. Now that we have Liberators that didn't exist, for example, in Heart of the Swarm. Liberators are good, tanks are better than in the past, mech is better, Thors are better, so you can't play Ling Bane Muta for the most part. Some once in a while we still see people pull it off, but basically Terrans, just main composition, will defeat like those fun mobile styles. And the only thing that Zerg has to take an efficient late game fight is pretty much Infesto Broodlord. Yes, we see some timing attacks with like Ultralists and Corruptors and stuff like that, but for the most part, the ideal scenario for Zerg is to just play for the late game and get that composition, and everything else is just doesn't scale. Most of those mid-tier compositions don't scale into the late game anymore for Zerg.
If you do want a Korean high-tier Zerg to study who does play timings against Terran, Impact, he has a lot of really cool builds that are kind of Roach Queen, Roach Ravager oriented, where he is across the map kind of in the early mid-game doing stuff. So it is very possible, and a very key reminder too for people who play the game not necessarily at the highest level. You can make stuff work that isn't necessarily viable at GSL Code S. You could be a very aggressive Zerg. You can Bane bust people. You can Roach Ravager all in. You can do all kinds of plays that can get you to the top of Masters, maybe even in GM, even though it's not on meta.
For me, I think my answer is it's similar to TLO's, but it's even more so with map design as well. Like you have Terran units that are better at dealing with mid-game Zerg, but you also have maps now where every natural is like tiny and you can just wall it off super easy. Whereas back then, you had more maps with more wide open naturals. Like a map I'm thinking about right now from like Wings of Liberty would be like Metalopolis. Like you had this massive open natural where you have way more potential for like run bys, little tiny timing attacks. It doesn't have to be like a fully committed all in. It could just be a harass. Nowadays, to harass someone, usually what happens is you run up into a supply depot wall. So if it's just a harass, you're usually going to get nothing done. It needs to be kind of more like timing focused. So it kind of like favors you to play more economy based rather than more aggressive based.
Okay. You guys gave some specific meta things. I actually have a slightly different idea of why it's becoming a bit more passive. I think that players have gotten a lot better. And if you look at Zerg as a race, I think that it favors more passive reactive play. When you look at the speed upgrade and vision of creep, you look at the great defensive capabilities of the Queen. Zerg, for instance, can make all their units later than anyone else because of the larva mechanic as opposed to having production buildings. And all these things make it a little bit stronger reactionarily, I think. And so if you want to win more, I think that you should play more reactionarily. And those are our best Zergs, even though we do have some really great aggressive Zergs, like the ones named Impact and Leenock back in the day and some of these others. It's the more turtley macro guys that are winning the championships.
You can be active too without an entire army commitment as well. Stuff like a 10-ling run by or a Baneling run by into a base is pretty common. It's true that it's not the bulk of your army that you're just shoving across the map, but you are trying to deal damage to your opponent. So it's not truly passive in the sense that you are not attacking. It's just not as committal with your main army.
I think to add one more thing that Dan said about the general gameplay, I feel since Legacy of the Void, Zerg's economies doesn't spike the same way it did in the past, where you would get a spike, on 3 bases, and then you could go, for example, for Roach timing or be aggressive or play Ling Bane Muta. I feel like now Zerg doesn't necessarily get to, a lot of times, to 58 or 60 drones way faster than the opponent, but Zerg manages to get the 4th base faster and then get to like 75 drones or something like that way before their opponents. And I think also because of that spike being more delayed, because of the more workers start, and maybe also simply because the way maps work and how players play nowadays.
Well, it's also because of the inject, right? Because it's 3 now instead of 4.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool. Good question there. Good answers all. Zesty asks, is playing random truly the most honorable way of playing the game? Who would win in an all-random global tournament right now? That includes people that don't main random, but are good at off-racing as well. Quick note on that, Pig has been running it's called like King of StarCraft or something on his channel, where he puts very strong random players like Beastie Cutie up against very strong other players at random. I think like Beastie Cutie beat some people, and then I think Raynor knocked him down, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't been keeping complete track, but is it the most honorable way of playing the game? And who do you guys think would win worldwide?
I think Scarlet is a pretty good candidate to be one of the favorite people. She's incredible with Protoss. I think her Protoss MMR is actually not significantly lower than her Zerg MMR. Yeah. I don't know how her Terran is, but I think she'd be pretty good. But I think also just some of the top Korean pros would be very good.
Yeah. Isn't Dark really good at all 3? I see him stream random a lot.
Probably.
I don't know if it's the most honorable way. I feel like there's so much more drama when you play random. Like everyone like wants to know your race, and if you don't say it, you're a dick. And if you do say it, it's just like, and it's like you get, I don't know. They like, oh, he's this race. I'm gonna prepare timing now. It's a tricky pickle, you know. But I don't know. I'd say if I just going off of who I have known to be really good at random, I put a lot of faith and confidence in Beastie Kitty. Even if he lost recently, come back. He can do it.
Yeah, he's quite strong as a random. Although I heard that he just switched to random so he could whine about Terran and I would say as far as honorability goes, it's one of the least honorable things you can do, because you cheese all the time as a random player because there's too many matchups and you don't know what you're doing. So there, how about that?
The shots have been fired, ladies and gentlemen.
They certainly have. I hate random players. It's like I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. Where's my building supposed to be? What's my opening? Oh, there's Zerglings in my base. You're good. Ah, yeah. All right. Thank you for the questions, Zesty. Our very own Alessander asks, if you're going to play a D&D game online, what would you play, race/class? And Neuro, what adventure would you send them on? So I guess you would be the dungeon master, but do you guys play D&D? Have you played D&D?
I haven't.
I haven't either. So I would be a bard elf, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I don't watch the D&D stuff, and I don't play it. It looked like a game that would be cool, and I was a nerd growing up, but I didn't really have nerd friends, so I didn't. Yeah, I missed out on that. So I'm not really sure. Nero, you look like the guy who's played D&D.
Well, we have a show, if I can plug my show.
Please, of course.
It's called Age of Anthems, and I play a moon elf bard named Grimdark. And he has basically like metal face paint kind of stuff, because I'm a metalhead, and that's a way to weave metal into a bard. I've done different like voice performances where I do a parody of a song. Like I've done a parody of a Death Clock song to hype up Pig's character so he gets inspired and things. It has a ton of room for creating a really unique and rich story with the people you're playing with. It very much is based on how good your group is, how fun the game experience is, because it's based on your imagination. So if you really like that idea of imagining your world and your characters and how they would interact with it, it's super, super awesome. There was a negative stigma for it when I was growing up, because I had kind of the jock football crowd was my friends, and they were saying D&D is really nerdy and stupid and you should never do that. And then on the religious side, there are witches and wizards, which is that's bad. You shouldn't do that. These are evil rituals, these D&D sessions. But Critical Role is the show that really paved the way for D&D on Twitch. It showed that it can be super awesome and engaging. But that's going to be like the highest caliber of D&D, where you have all professional voice actors who are doing it. So it's extra entertaining. But yeah, the adventure that we've been on has been really interesting. There are some magical relics that we're trying to collect that we're part of this big rift in the world that was created. There are a bunch of different factions that are vying for power, and our group is trying to make sense of the world and basically choose our alignment, but we're being pressured by a bunch of bullies constantly, so we don't always have a ton of choice in the matter. But it's been super awesome. We're joined by Pig, Chibi Miharu, and Apoptosis. Those are the other party members, and it's DM'd by Corporate Scandal. And Cobra Venom is helping us with production and everything. So it's been a super fun road and journey so far. I'm pretty new to D&D as well, so it's a learning experience, but yeah, it's totally fun.
Oh, sounds cool. People definitely go check that out. Who's this Apoptosis guy, though? I like his idea.
Great name.
Yeah, Apoptosis, he is a goblin swashbuckler in our party. He's also a StarCraft streamer. He usually gets maybe between 20 and 40 to 50 viewers.
Oh, nice.
So that was our common thread, is StarCraft. And then he's more veteran D&D than I am. He's actually in our WoW team of people who are leveling with me on White Main Horde side. He's playing a undead rogue there, but he's a very charismatic and funny guy. Big fan of him. It's been fun collaborating with him. And Chibi Miharu is also a StarCraft person. I think she went to Montreal. She goes to a lot of the StarCraft events. She also streams StarCraft, plays Zerg, and she's been a lot of fun playing her elf druid. Pig is hilarious. He really wants to like mess stuff up. I think the aspect of the combat and violence and getting to be an actual pig in the game and like gore stuff, he gets to kind of be himself, really. So he's the kind of person who just wants to play the next level version of yourself in a fantasy world.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for the question, Alessander. NeosteelEnthusiast asks, I believe WCS Fall Finals Game 1 is the first pro game I've witnessed that has ended in the win condition. Do you recall any other epic pro games that have ended this way, or a memorable win condition game you played in? So he's talking about basically the actual win condition of the game is to kill all the buildings, and that's how the game ended, and we don't see that often. So do you guys have some memorable games that you've seen of that, or anything similar?
I can't help but get the Mara versus Scarlet out of my head now. So you're gonna have to move on else.
To lift the command center.
Please lift it! For that one flashbulb moment, the entire StarCraft scene got to feel really smart because they knew what to
yeah. For those of you confused what he's talking about, at WESG, there was a crazy game on King's Cove, I believe it was, against Scarlet and Maru, where it came down to nothing left, and all Maru had to do was fly a building, and it would have been a draw. Instead, he left, he GG'd, and he outed, because Scarlet had a sick ground army, or an anti-ground army, rather.
For me, I can't think of anyone other than the one I played. It was one of my first times being at like an MLG, and I had a match that was like it was the final match of day one. Basically, it was like your round 4, and if you won it, whoever won this would go to like the bottom of like the championship bracket, basically. And I had a game that was 90 minutes long against a Terran named This Is Jimmy, and it was kind of crazy because when it finally came to an end, there were like 30 people standing behind, just like, because the game was so intense, because like it was like 25 minutes of like one building, just kind of like a spore crawler running around, and like a couple of buildings flying around. It was pretty stupid, but it was that's probably mine.
Cool.
I have one that isn't actually a pro match, but it's the one that's been burned into my memory. And it was Brood War. I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and it was a match on Lost Temple. And Artosis especially is going to enjoy the playstyle I had at that time. I remember it was a game I had the top left and the bottom right island. I was happily making carriers. And it was against a Terran that made Mass Goliath, like, normal stuff against Mass Carrier. And the game was basically going on for like 60 minutes. I had carriers on cliffs with shield batteries and all the good stuff, the high skill, excellent Protoss Brood War play. And it basically came down to both of us being completely mined out. And I killed the last dropship Terran had. He was killing buildings I still had left on another cliff, and had one probe left on the cliff and carriers without interceptors. And I make the last pylon, thinking I can get a draw, and I place it just one hex too close to the cliff, and he can scan
Oh.
and kill the Pylon with Goliath from the low ground. I think it was a 12 o'clock cliff on Lost Temple, and I have to think about this game once in a while because it's the saddest moment of my life.
Truly painful. Truly painful. Yeah, I can't think of any win condition games. Like I've had ones where it comes down to like, an assimilator in a mutiless space trade type thing or something. I do remember before, they put in the thing that draws games. I had games back at the beginning in like Wings of Liberty before they put in the thing that will let you draw if it goes too long. But I had a game where the Terran floated his buildings after I killed him, and I didn't have the money to make any flying units. And so I told him, okay, I'm going to work. And when I got back, I had the win. So that felt good. All right. Thank you for the question. Ravi Parikh, aka Fear Dragon, asks, hey guys, great show. I was surprised to hear you guys say you felt streaming allowed fewer off days than pro gaming. Do you feel like it's that having the wrong off day, a big tourney, is more impactful for pros, but streamers have bigger consequences for an average off day? Thanks, Large Ice Pack.
For me, like the thing about tournaments is you'll have smaller tournaments here and there. They might do like one a week, one every 2 weeks, like little show matches or some type of bracket that you qualified for, which aren't super impactful. Like they're the little bits here and there, but the big ones, like let's say WCS or something, if you have an off day and you get eliminated really early from that, it is super impactful for a pro gamer. You get no exposure there. You get, especially for someone who's teamless, for instance, you get no exposure there. You have to just kind of regroup yourself and go back from, just wait for the next opportunity. And it's sometimes also not even a guarantee that you're going to make it through qualifiers either. So you have so much so many obstacles you have to overcome to get to the Premiere stuff. And then if you have an off day in Premiere, it just feels like it crumbles down around you. But as a streamer, honestly, for me, I only really get the same feeling of like, okay, things are falling apart. If I were to do something like, I have to take 3 weeks off for something, which, and then you're like, oh man, when I came back, I just lost like 40% of my subs and everything just kind of falls apart. But for the most part, being a streamer, like as long as you just, like you can have like one day that's not so good, but then you just kind of forget about it and you go back to normal as is every day after that.
One of the things that is different about streaming as opposed to many other jobs is every mistake you make is recorded and live, and you have potentially hundreds or thousands of people watching those mistakes unfold. So there isn't the same, I guess, cover of you have a bad day, maybe you don't move quite as fast, but it's not as though every little aspect of your poor condition is showing through your play. I think that's a really tough part about streaming StarCraft, especially as the primary game, is it's a very, very performance intensive game. So for me, if I haven't slept enough, my MMR is like minus 100 or sometimes 300 if I'm off like 2 hours of sleep. And then people are seeing you lose. And then there's all the questions about what is going on? Like, should you go for a different strategy? All this kind of stuff. But some of it is just how well your human body and your brain are functioning on that day. And that can be just related to real life stuff, not necessarily that you've lost your understanding of how StarCraft works. So there are definitely a lot of pain and pressure points of being a broadcaster and a live streamer. Definitely not as much anxiety and pressure as tournament play, of course, because that's like super intense. You need to perform today, right now. You're not going to get an opportunity tomorrow when you've slept better.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Have anything on that, TLO?
I just have my mind broken from the thanks large ice pack.
I got it.
Well, you're an exceptionally smart person. It takes a genius to understand the workings of Robbie sometimes. Well, I do think, that both streaming and pro gaming comes with their own stress, but I do think that pro gaming is way more volatile and has higher peaks of stress, but streaming probably has maybe more consistent stress.
Yeah. Like if you do either for a living, obviously it's there's a lot there, but you have to perform on a given day in pro gaming, which can be pretty crazy. All right. Thank you for the question there, Fear Dragon. All All right, the last question that we have here, World is Doom asks, could Broodlords be the problem with Broodlord Infestor? It seems there are no ground-based armies that can ever compete with Broodlords, so slowing the game down with mass air is the only response. Your thoughts, guys?
I think we addressed this before when we were talking about the Broodlord versus Ultra and the slow army versus fast army kind of question of what do we want to incentivize in the late game, because the early and the mid game tend to be pretty fast units running around, faster, cheaper units, and that's pretty exciting to see in terms of game flow. And then as the game gets later and later, people get more of their value kind of clumped up into a single point that kind of slowly moves on the map as opposed to stuff that's happening faster around the map. The Nidus change, I think, was meant to change that a little bit to incentivize Zergs being active more in the late stage. But yeah, I would agree. The Broodlord is sort of a critical mass thing where if you get enough of them, then it does just beat ground armies, which is kind of unfun in a way.
Actually, coming back to the question about redesigning, one thing I'd actually really like to see is changing Broodlords to a more of a Guardian type unit. Broodlords are very odd in the way they behave because having a few Broodlords is almost useless because so much of their value comes from creating Broodlings rather than just pure damage. So if you're facing an army that has many Broodlords, your army might your ground army might end up doing absolutely nothing because it's just busy with killing Broodlings over and over and not being able to move forward. So I'd rather see the Broodlord's damage being buffed, which is actually relatively low for an expensive unit like that, and instead remove Broodlings. And I think that might actually by itself already improve the game a little bit, in my opinion.
So they just have the Broodling strike then?
I mean, whatever, like give them whatever attack that's just normal damage.
I feel like yeah, it has sorry, but the Broodlings like if you reduced Broodling health to 1, wouldn't this comp still be used?
No.
Broodlord Infestor, you don't think so? If the health was
no, I think it's huge. Them just getting
well, it would be huge, but I'm saying like just the amount of time it takes to shoot all the Broodlings to get them out of your way is a big part of this, and the fact that all of them need to be shot multiple times.
Okay.
So that's what I'm
So you
trying
think
to get
because
at.
they still have 1 HP, like you still need to spend some time killing them?
You still have to stop and shoot them. They're still in your way. You can't just walk forward. Yeah.
And if you have some type of AoE, it would like clean them out super fast, like Hellbats or Archons or something.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Vibe, though?
I was going to say, I was just thinking that a great way to change a Broodlord would be to give it a kind of like a cargo where it can like almost be like a drop lord Broodlord, where it can load up like a Thor, but it's a swarm host now, and you just have unlimited free units that get launched at your opponent. Just no, I'm just joking.
It's a great idea. All right. Thank you for the question, World is Doom, and thank you to everyone for the questions. It's been a wonderful show. Let me go ahead and thank our sponsors real quick. Of course, AFKT.com has been with us a long time. Definitely, you can check them out. They are down right now, as is Matcherino.com/The Pylon Show. But when they come back up, use code word LOVE. We also have our Patreon, where we just got all those questions from. Thank you, everyone, so much for supporting our Patreon. Patreon.com/The Pylon Show. You guys are absolutely amazing and why we can end up doing this show. Also, check out thepylonshow.com. Has all your Pylon Show needs. It'll tell you everything, who's been on, everywhere that you can get the Pylon Show and all that. And of course, a big thanks to the Pylon Show staff, who has worked tirelessly to make this show as good as it is.
Speaking of which, we have an announcement here. I'll give you a sneak peek on stream. This is our forum. It is launched. Patrons will be able to access this via our Discord. There's a special link in there. They can go click it. I will ping them now. They can go shitpost and do whatever they want for quite a while, but it will be wiped once we're out of beta, and then it will relaunch. That's any Patreon paying any amount. That's $2 all the way up
to $1,000 for a tasteless phone call.
That's
all
correct.
right. All right, awesome. So definitely check that out on thepylonshow.com. All right. This has been just a great episode, guys. All three of you. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you guys tell everyone what you're up to, where they can get more of you, what's coming up for you, what you want people to think about, do, see, watch, whatever. TLO, let's start with you, man. What do you have coming up for the people?
Well, actually, tomorrow I'll be facing Nerdshio in the Bonja Fight Night Club. I think it's 11 a.m. CEST. So if you want to see some competitive CVC, it's a best of 7 casted by the German caster Honor. And I don't know if there's an English-speaking cast, but German is a beautiful language, so you should tune in either way. And yeah, I'll be streaming when I can, always on twitch.tv/Liquid.TLO. Now that the off season is basically upon us, for those who weren't so lucky to qualify to BlizzCon, I'll probably be online a little bit more than usual. So see you there.
Very cool. All right, Nero, what are you up to?
So this Saturday, I will be participating in the Nation Wars Caster Streamer Best of 5 tournament. And I'm a big underdog for that, so if you want to cheer for me, you could do that. It's always good practice, too, when you're playing against people who are higher rated than yourself. I've also been working in philosophy talks, and the podcast has been launched for me, thanks to Cobra Venom. So stuff like the political discussions, bringing on guests for different topics to discuss things. That's going to be available in audio-only format for people, because I know a lot of people don't have the time to watch a Twitch stream, but they can put on a podcast and listen to some things. So that's been a really nice addition to the content. Sundays, I do political discussion. Just to give people a reminder, it's a very neutral, peaceful discussion as well. So if you want to just find out what's happening in the news in a way that people aren't actively screaming at each other, that's a pretty nice format. I have an expert on who has 2 master's degrees, and he's just always reading news like for fun. So he talks about stuff, just laying out the facts, and then I, as the host, try to engage the viewership and talk about what's going on, just so we can get a sense of what's happening. And then there is WoW Classic content now, which has role-playing in it, where I have a character, he has a personality. Many of the people who I'm playing with have characters. And I also role-play a StarCraft account as well called Icky Sticky. I don't know if I've talked about that on the Pylon show, but it's basically kind of like, imagine Zagara or some kind of brood character whose only mission and purpose is to make the map as icky and as sticky as possible, just with creep spread. So I won't really focus on a build order or a unit composition. It is just pushing the creep as fast as you physically can. And one of the really silly things about this, as I'm doing this voice, icky sticky, is my MMR went higher with this account than my main account.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of like, I thought I was memeing about. It's exhausting for me to do this, but it's been a really fun aspect of kind of expanding the StarCraft content. And I wanted to give a special shout out to the player named Slammer. Maybe Vibe has played against him. So. Yep. Slammer RPs. Slammer has a big hammer, and he'll type a bunch of question marks about why you think you can challenge him because he's too strong. And if he loses, he'll say Slammer needs a bigger hammer or something. He's got his own script, and it's just hilarious. So because of this guy memeing about, Icky Sticky was born. So there's a lot of really fun potential, I think, for having a good time with StarCraft and thinking a little bit about like the lore of why you're there contesting the other race in this sort of format on that map.
All right, excellent. That's hilarious though that your kind of memeing account is higher now. It kind of shows the strength of creep spread. What an interesting way to learn that.
Is it icky? Is it sticky? Because it should be.
Perfect. And Vibe, what are you up to? Where can people find you?
So it's pretty easy for me. You just got to go to Vibe LOL on pretty much everything. If you want to make it easy, just go to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/Vibe LOL. I have a YouTube.
Is that for League of Legends or Laugh Out Loud? I'm sorry.
It's Laugh Out Loud. I made it before League. I get that question all the time. I even made it in my Twitter header. It's actually part of my description, as it's for laughing, not leaguing. But
okay, yeah, please go
ahead. I'm just basically streaming all the time, man. Lately we've been just like Neuro. We've been on the classic WoW binge as well, but I'm still putting in lots of StarCraft hours at the same time. And here next Thursday, I'll be doing a Twitch front page promo, kind of hammering out the details of what I'm going to be doing for that. So it should be a really fun stream. But pretty much, like, honestly, 6 days a week. Streams are honestly about 10 hours a day, roughly. So all the time, if you guys want some StarCraft content, highly recommend it. And if you're looking to learn StarCraft, I highly recommend maybe going and checking out my YouTube channel. There's tutorials, guides, coaching lessons, analysis videos, basically you name it, tons of information if you're looking to improve.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been a great show again, guys. The Pylon Show, of course, will be back next week. Same time, same place. Other than that, GSL is off for another 6 days because it is Korean Thanksgiving. I'll still be doing my stream and all that in the meantime. But that is about it. Thank you so much to everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.